Tonight, we're uncovering the complete truth about Mew, the original Pokémon. There are some interesting details to follow, but I'll keep everything gentle enough for sleep. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment night 1. Now back to the video. Imagine, if you will, a time before the world was connected by a web of instant information. It is the mid-1990s. You are sitting on a playground, or perhaps in the back of a car, as the sun begins to set, the streetlights casting long, rhythmic shadows across the small, pea-soup green screen of a handheld console. In this world, there are only 150 monsters to find. You know their names, you know their shapes, and you have memorized their types. But then, a whisper begins to circulate. It is a rumor that shouldn't exist. Someone says they saw something else, something pink, something that wasn't in the official guidebook, a ghost in the machine. 151st Secret. This is where our journey begins. Not with a marketing campaign or a planned reveal, but with a secret, tucked away in the final seconds of a deadline, a digital story that would change the course of entertainment history forever. Mew is not just another entry in a Pokédex. It is the foundation of a mythology, the biological ancestor of an entire world of creatures, and perhaps most interestingly, a rebellion by a single programmer who wanted to leave a little bit of magic behind. Tonight, we are going to peel back the layers of this mystery. We will look at the tall grass of the South American rainforests, where the first journals were found. We will walk through the cold, sterile hallways of the laboratory on Cinnabar Island, where science attempted to play God. We will explore the very code of the game itself, to see how a few kilobytes of data created a legend that could not be contained. Why does Mew hold such a grip on our collective memory? Perhaps it is because Mew represents the ultimate mystery of the natural world. In the lore of this universe, Mew is the progenitor. It is the common ancestor, the genetic blueprint from which every other species branched out. Within its tiny, cat-like frame, it carries the DNA of everything that flies, swims, or crawls. It is the beginning of the story, and yet, for the longest time, it was also the end of the Pokédex. It is the alpha and the omega of a world we have all spent hundreds of hours exploring. But the truth of Mew is split between two worlds. There is the world of the story, where Mew is an elusive, playful spirit that can turn invisible at will, hiding from the eyes of humans who might wish to exploit its power. And then there is the real world, our world, where Mew was a mistake, a glitch, and a miracle all at once. To understand the complete truth, we have to look at both. We have to understand how a creature that was never meant to be found became the most sought-after prize in the history of gaming. Think about the silence of the jungle for a moment. In the games, we find mentions of Mew in scorched journals left behind in a ruined mansion. The words are sparse, written by researchers who were half-crazed by their discovery. They spoke of a new Pokémon discovered deep in the jungle. They spoke of its birth, its power, and eventually, the tragedy that followed. There is a weight to this story, a sense of ancient history that contrasts sharply with the bright, colorful world of the rest of the game. Mew is the link between the prehistoric past and the high-tech future. And yet, while the scientists in the game were trying to capture it, the developers at Game Freak were trying to fit it into a cartridge that was already full. There was no room left. The game was finished. The debugging was over. And yet, one man, Shigeki Morimoto, looked at the tiny bit of space remaining on the disc and decided to perform a bit of digital alchemy. He didn't tell his bosses. He didn't tell the marketing team. He simply slipped Mew into the empty space, thinking that if it stayed hidden, it would be his own personal secret. He could never have imagined that the players would find it. He could never have imagined that a series of specific, unintended inputs, walking at a certain time, pressing a button in a certain menu, talking to a specific character, would tear a hole in the game's logic and allow this secret creature to step through into the light. This wasn't just a discovery, it was a cultural explosion. It turned every player into a digital archaeologist, searching for the truth behind the 151st Pokémon. Tonight, we will move slowly through these events. We will discuss the biology of Mew, how its ability to learn every move reflects its status, as the genetic mother of all Pokémon. We will look at the darker side of its legacy, the creation of Mewtwo, a creature born of ambition and cold science, and how the contrast between the two defines the moral heart of the series. We will look at the first movie, where these two forces finally met, and what that confrontation told us about the nature of life and the soul. But more than that, we will let the atmosphere of this mystery wash over us. We will consider the quiet, shimmering blue of its shiny form, the way it floats effortlessly through the air, and the shy, timid personality that makes it so endearing. Mew is a creature of peace, in a world often defined by battle. It is a reminder of a time when the world felt a little more magical, when there were still secrets to be found if you just looked in the right place, or listened to the right rumor. So, as we settle in, let your mind wander back to those early days. Forget the high-definition graphics and the complex mechanics of the modern era. Return to the simple, black and grey pixels. Hear the chiptune music of the Cerulean cave. Feel the weight of the mystery. We are going back to the beginning. We are going back to the source. We are uncovering the truth about the creature that started it all. The story of Mew is a story of life itself. It is about where we come from, and the potential of what we can become. It is a story about the mistakes we make when we try to control nature, and the beauty that exists when we simply let it be. It is a story that exists in the code of a game, in the frames of a film, and in the memories of millions of people who grew up wondering if they, too, could find the secret hidden under the truck near the SS Anne. As we dive into the history, the lore, and the science of the original Pokémon, we will keep the lights low and the tone soft. There is no rush. The secrets of Mew have waited decades to be fully understood, and they will wait a little longer as we move through them tonight. From the mountain peaks of the Johto region to the tropical islands of Alola, Mew's presence is felt everywhere, a silent guardian of the genetic code. We will examine the ancient trademarks, some of which were filed before the word Pokémon was even a household name. We will look at the way Mew was revealed to the public through magazines and special events, and how those events created a template for how we interact with games today. We will talk about the differences between a legendary and a mythical Pokémon, and why Mew sits in a category all its own. There is a certain peace in the idea of Mew. It is a creature that doesn't want to fight, even though it possesses the power to do almost anything. It is a creature that plays, that hides, and that watches. In many ways, it is the heart of the entire franchise, a symbol of the joy of discovery and the wonder of the unknown. So take a deep breath. Let the stress of the day fade away. We are going on a journey into the heart of a digital myth. We are going to find the truth that has been hidden for over 25 years. We are going to meet the ancestor of all Pokémon. The journey starts in the tall grass. It starts with a whisper. It starts with the realization that the world is much bigger than we were told. Let us begin our exploration of the one, the only, the original. Let us begin the story of Mew. To truly understand Mew, we have to understand the environment that birthed it. Not just the fictional jungles of the Kanto region, but the cramped, high-pressure offices in Tokyo, where a small team of developers was trying to do something that had never been done before. They were trying to create a world that lived inside a pocket. They were working with limitations that would seem impossible today. Every byte of data was precious. Every pixel had to earn its place. In this environment, there was no room for extras. There was no room for fluff. And yet, there was a sense of playfulness. The creators weren't just making a product. They were building a world they wanted to live in. And in that world, there had to be a secret. There had to be something that was just out of reach. When we look at Mew's design, something that looks remarkably like an embryo, this was intentional. It represents the potential of life before it takes a specific shape. It is pink, soft and small, with large eyes that seem to see everything with a sense of wonder. It is the blank canvas upon which all other Pokémon were painted. When it moves, it doesn't walk. It floats, as if it isn't quite bound by the same laws of physics that govern the rest of us. It is a creature of pure psychic energy, a manifestation of the mind and the spirit. In the lore, this psychic power is what allows it to transform. Mew can become any other Pokémon. It can mimic their shapes, their cries, and their powers. This isn't just a neat trick for a battle. It is a profound statement about its nature. If Mew is everything, then everything is, in some small way, Mew. It is the thread that connects the smallest bug Pokémon to the largest dragons. It is the reason why a trainer in a distant region can feel a connection to a creature they have never seen before. We are all part of the same tree of life. But with great power comes great interest from those who would use it for their own ends. This is where the story of Mew takes a darker turn. In the ruins of the Pokémon Mansion on Cinnabar Island, we find the scorched remains of a dream. We find the story of scientists who found Mew and thought they could improve upon it. They didn't see a living, breathing creature. They saw a resource. They saw a set of instructions that they could rewrite. They spent years trying to clone Mew, trying to create the ultimate weapon, and in their hubris, they created Mewtwo. While Mew is a creature of nature and spontaneity, Mewtwo is a creature of logic and pain. Mew is small. Mewtwo is imposing. Mew is playful. Mewtwo is serious. Mew is the original. Mewtwo is the reflection, distorted by human ambition. The contrast between them is one of the most compelling themes in the entire series. It asks us what happens when we try to take the magic of the world and turn it into something we can control. But even in the face of this darkness, Mew remains unchanged. In the stories where they meet, Mew doesn't approach Mewtwo with anger or fear. It approaches with curiosity. It sees its clone not as a monster, but as another expression of life. This is the core of Mew's character. It is the ultimate optimist. It believes in the goodness of life because it is the source of all life. As we go deeper into this story, we will look at how this mythology has evolved over the generations. We will see how the introduction of other ancient Pokémon, like the creator deity Arceus, has changed our understanding of Mew's place in the universe. Is Mew the ancestor of all Pokémon, or is it a servant of a higher power? Or perhaps, is the truth somewhere in between? Is it possible that both things are true? That in the world of Pokémon, science and mythology are just two different ways of describing the same miracle? We will also spend time with the real-world history of the Mew distribution events. These were legendary moments in the late 90s. To get a Mew, you couldn't just play the game. You had to go somewhere. You had to stand in line at a mall or a convention center. You had to connect your Game Boy to a special machine. These events turned a solitary hobby into a community experience. They made Mew feel real. It wasn't just a piece of data, it was a guest in our world. The mystery of Mew was so powerful that it even spawned its own urban legends. The most famous, of course, was the truck. Near the port where the SS Anne docked, there was a single, solitary truck parked on a small patch of land. It served no purpose in the game. You couldn't interact with it. And because it was so out of place, millions of children convinced themselves that if they could just move that truck, Mew would be underneath. We spent hours trying every possible item and move, searching for a secret that wasn't there. But the beautiful thing is that even though Mew wasn't under the truck, in the game, it was waiting in the code, a silent observer of our efforts. The fact that the rumor was false didn't matter, because the creature was real. It was the first time many of us realized that the digital worlds we inhabited had secrets that weren't listed in the back of the box. It taught us to look closer, to question what we were told, and to believe in the impossible. Tonight, we will celebrate that feeling. We will go through the technical details of the Mew glitch, explaining how the game's memory can be tricked into generating an encounter with the 151st Pokémon. We will walk through the steps of the long-range trainer glitch, a process that feels like a magic spell, requiring you to fly away from a battle at the exact moment it starts. It is a reminder that even the most structured systems have cracks, and in those cracks, we can find something wonderful. We will also look at the various appearances of Mew in the spin-off games, from the photography of Pokémon Snap to the dungeon crawling of Mystery Dungeon. In every appearance, Mew retains its elusive, mythical status. It is always the ultimate find, the rarest encounter, the hidden gem. As the hours pass, and we move through the decades of history, we will see how Mew has remained a constant. Even as hundreds of new Pokémon were added, even as the games moved from 2 dimensions to 3, and even as the world moved from handheld consoles to smartphones, Mew never lost its luster. It is still the gold standard for mystery. It is still the original. So, let the sound of my voice be your guide as we wander through the tall grass of memory. Let the details of the past soothe you. We are going to look at the stats, the moves, the lore, and the legacy. We are going to see why, after all these years, Mew still holds a special place in the hearts of trainers all over the world. Whether you are a veteran who remembers the smell of the plastic of a brand new copy of Pokémon Red, or a newcomer who first met Mew in the Alola region or on your phone, this story is for you. It is a story about the power of imagination and the enduring magic of a secret well kept. Let us begin our deep dive. Let us explore the tall trees of the Guyana jungle. Let us read the journals of Mr. Fuji. Let us witness the birth of a legend. This is the complete truth about Mew. In the quiet moments of the night, it is easy to imagine that somewhere, hidden just out of sight, a small, pink creature is watching over the world. It is invisible, but it is there. It is the spark of life that connects us all, and as we learn its story, perhaps we can find a little bit of that spark in ourselves. The air is cool, the world is quiet, and the journey is just beginning. Let us walk together into the history of the 151st Pokémon. Let us uncover the truth of Mew. We start with the name, Mew. It is a simple sound, almost like the cry of a kitten, but it carries a weight of history. In the early days of development, before the game was even called Pokémon, before the world knew what a Pokéball was, the name Mew was already there. It was one of the very first trademarks ever filed for the project. In some ways, Mew existed before the world it inhabits was even fully formed. It is a name that suggests both a beginning and a mystery. It is a soft sound for a powerful being. As we look at the geography of Mew's origin, we find ourselves in South America. In the games, specifically the first generation, the diaries in the Pokémon Mansion mention that Mew was discovered in the deep jungles of Guyana. This is one of the few times the games reference a real-world location. It grounds Mew in our world, making it feel less like a cartoon character and more like a biological discovery. It suggests a world where there are still places humans haven't fully explored, where ancient secrets still linger in the shadows of the canopy. The researchers who found Mew were led by a man named Dr. Fuji. In the journals, he describes the encounter with a sense of awe. They didn't find a monster, they found a miracle. They found a creature that seemed to be the source of all the others. They captured it, and for a brief moment they held the secret of life in their hands. But as we know, that secret was too big for them to contain. The attempt to clone Mew is one of the most significant events in the history of the Pokémon world. It represents the transition from the natural world to the technological one. Mewtwo was the result of that transition, a creature made of DNA and ambition, born in a tank, surrounded by cold glass and humming machinery. The tragedy of Mewtwo is that it was created to be a better version of Mew, but in the process, the scientists lost everything that made Mew special. They lost the playfulness, the innocence, and the connection to the rest of the world. But Mew survived. While Mewtwo escaped and sought its own purpose, Mew faded back into the shadows. It didn't seek revenge. It didn't try to reclaim what was taken. It simply continued to be. This resilience is a key part of its lore. You cannot destroy the original. You cannot overwrite the blueprint of life. When we look at the technical side of Mew, this reflected in its ability to learn every move. In the games, most Pokémon are limited by their type or their physical form. A fire Pokémon can't usually learn water moves. A bird can't usually learn to dig. But Mew is the exception. Because it contains the genetic code of every species, it has the potential for every ability. It is the ultimate jack of all trades. It is the only creature that can truly adapt to any situation, because it is, in a sense, every situation. This mastery of moves makes Mew a fascinating subject for players. It is the ultimate blank slate. You can teach it to be a powerful attacker, a sturdy defender, or a supportive healer. It is whatever you need it to be. This flexibility is a direct reflection of its role as the ancestor. It is the point from which all possibilities flow. As the years went by and more Pokémon were discovered, the mystery of Mew only grew. When the second generation of games introduced the concept of legendary birds and beasts, Mew remained the gold standard. When the third generation took us to the Hoenn region and introduced the ancient titans of land and sea, Mew was still there, hidden away on a distant island that could only be reached with a special map. The Faraway Island event in the Emerald version is one of the most atmospheric moments in the series. To find Mew, you had to travel to a place that felt forgotten by time. The island was overgrown, quiet, and filled with a sense of peace. When you finally encountered Mew, it didn't just stand there waiting for a fight. It played with you. It hid in the tall grass, peeking out and then disappearing. It turned the encounter into a game of hide and seek. This is the essence of Mew. Even when being hunted by a trainer, it sees the world as a place for play. In the 4th generation, the mythology expanded even further with the introduction of Arceus, the Pokémon said to have created the entire universe. This created a fascinating debate among fans. If Arceus created the world, then where does Mew fit in? The most common theory is that Arceus is the architect, the one who designed the laws of physics and the shape of the cosmos, while Mew is the biological seed. Arceus built the house, and Mew is the life that fills it. They are two different kinds of first. One is the first in time, and the other is the first in biology. This relationship between the divine and the biological is one of the many things that makes the lore of this series so deep. It allows for different interpretations. Some see Mew as a lucky accident of evolution, while others see it as a deliberate creation. But regardless of its origin, its impact is undeniable. We must also talk about the physical form of Mew in more detail. Its long, thin tail is often its most recognizable feature, ending in a slight bulb. Some have pointed out that this tail looks like a strand of DNA, a subtle nod to its role as the genetic ancestor. Its large, soulful eyes are filled with intelligence, but not the cold, calculating intelligence of a human. It is the intelligence of a creature that is perfectly in tune with its environment. When Mew turns invisible, it isn't just a defensive move, it is a choice. It chooses when and to whom it wants to be seen. It is said that Mew only reveals itself to those who have a pure heart and a strong desire to see it. This makes every encounter with Mew feel like a personal blessing. It isn't something you can force. It is something you must earn. In the world of competitive play, Mew has always been a unique figure because its stats are perfectly balanced. 100 points in every category. It doesn't have a single weakness, but it also doesn't have a single overwhelming strength. It is the definition of balance. This balance is another reflection of its status as the original. It hasn't yet specialized into the extremes of its descendants. It is the center of the circle from which all other points are measured. As we move into the modern era, with games like Pokémon GO and the Let's Go series, Mew has become more accessible, but no less special. The special research tasks that allow players to find Mew are designed to take time and effort. You have to catch hundreds of Pokémon, walk dozens of kilometers, and prove your dedication as a trainer. When you finally see that pink glow on your screen, it feels like a culmination of your entire journey. It is a bridge between the virtual world and the real one. But even with all this information, even with the data mines and the strategy guides, there is still a part of Mew that remains a mystery. There is still a sense that we don't know everything, and that is exactly how it should be. A myth that is fully explained is no longer a myth. Mew exists in that space between what we know and what we feel. Tonight, as we continue to explore this legacy, let yourself sink deeper into the mystery. Think about the billions of years of evolution that Mew represents. Think about the millions of trainers who have searched for it. Think about the quiet joy of a secret that was never meant to be found. We are going to look at the movies, the anime, and the various ways Mew has been portrayed over the years. We will see how its personality has been consistent, a beacon of light in a world that can sometimes feel dark. We will see how it has inspired artists, writers, and dreamers. The story of Mew is the story of Pokémon itself. It is a story that began with a single person's secret and grew into a global phenomenon. It is a story that reminds us that no matter how much we think we know, there is always something more to discover. So stay with me. Let the history of the 151st Pokémon guide you into a peaceful sleep. We have so much more to talk about. We have the secrets of the code, the wonders of the anime, and the lasting impact of the original Pokémon. The jungle is quiet, the laboratory is empty, the Game Boy is glowing, and Mew is there, waiting for us to find it one more time. As we transition into the next part of our journey, let us remember the words of the researchers in the Cinnabar Mansion. Mew gave birth. We named the newborn Mewtwo. In those 10 words, the entire history of the franchise was changed. It was the moment the myth became a reality, and the reality became a legend. Let us continue. Let us explore the complete truth about Mew. In February of 1996, Pokémon Red and Green launched in Japan, and with them came a Pokédex that officially listed 150 creatures, a complete set, or so the players thought. For weeks, children across the country traded and battled, convinced they had seen everything the game had to offer. But in the margins of the code, buried in a place no ordinary player was meant to reach, a quiet secret had been sleeping. It didn't have an in-game encounter method. It wasn't on any official map. It simply existed, a ghost waiting in the machine. What made this different from any other hidden content was the world in which it was born. In 1996, the internet was not the sprawling, instantaneous network we know today. There were no forums to verify a rumor in seconds, no data miners to dissect a ROM before release. Information moved like whispers in a schoolyard, slow, incomplete, and absolutely magnetic. When a few lucky players stumbled upon a glitch that brought a strange pink creature onto their screens, the story spread not through a tweet, but through word of mouth, through phone calls, through the kind of mystery that only thrives in the dark. That creature was Mew, and its existence was not an accident of design, but a deliberate insertion by a Game Freak programmer named Shigeki Morimoto. He had slipped it into the final build without the knowledge of the main team as a personal project, a little cat thing that he wanted to exist somewhere in the world of Pokémon. No one was supposed to find it through normal play, but the game's code had other ideas. A rare glitch, born from memory manipulation and the interactions of specific trainers, allowed players to force an encounter with something that technically shouldn't have been there. Imagine the tension of that moment. You are a child, sitting cross-legged on a bedroom floor, a Game Boy in your hands. You have followed a chain of obscure, almost impossible steps. A wild Pokémon that used Fly, a sequence of moves that broke the game's logic, and now you see a sprite that isn't in any guidebook. There is no fanfare, no music change, just the quiet hum of the cartridge, and a creature you were never meant to see. The atmosphere is thick, with the feeling that you have stumbled into forbidden ground, that you have found a ghost in the machine. That feeling defined the legend. Because there was no internet to check, no way to confirm if anyone else had done the same, the rumour became its own fuel. Every schoolyard had a story, a friend of a friend who had caught it, a kid who knew someone who worked at Nintendo. The lack of proof made the mystery stronger. The official count was 150, but the whispers said otherwise. And in the absence of a simple answer, the imagination filled the void. This was the moment that turned Pokémon from a successful game into a cultural phenomenon. The hunt for the 151st was not just a secret. It was a shared experience that connected players in a way that the internet would later make routine. But back then, you had to be there. You had to feel the uncertainty, the thrill of not knowing whether the creature even existed at all. The ghost in the machine became the machine's most powerful engine, and as the spring of 1996 turned to summer, those whispers grew louder. It began to take shape in magazines, in playground conversations, in the desperate hope of every trainer who had ever wondered what else might be hiding in the code. The rumour mill was just going to churn, and it would soon become the most famous urban legend in gaming history. That story, the playground rumour mill, is where our journey continues next, and the search began. Chapter 1 ended with the game in the wild, a perfect static world of 150 creatures, locked into cartridges and handed to a generation of players. But a vacuum had been created. The number 150 felt incomplete. It felt like a period at the end of a sentence, when everyone was hoping for an ellipsis. The game itself was silent, but the playgrounds of the world were not. This is the chapter where the machine stopped talking and the children started, and what they whispered to each other became the engine that drove Pokémon from a simple cartridge into a global mythology. You have to understand the environment of the late 1990s. This was before the wide web was in every home. This was before a quick search could debunk a rumor in seconds. If you wanted to know a secret about Pokémon, you had to trade a secret. You had to overhear something on the bus. You had to convince the kid at the library that you had something he wanted, so he would trade you his information. And the most valuable currency in this entire economy was the myth of the 151st. The most famous of these myths was the truck under the S.An. You remember the S.An, the luxury cruise liner docked in Vermilion City, the ship that leaves forever. Once you get the cut technique, it felt so final. It felt like a door that would never open again, but the rumor said otherwise. The rumor said that if you managed to get back onto the ship using a glitch, or if you had never left it in the first place, there was a small truck parked near the dock, a single solitary truck, utterly out of place. And the rumor was very specific. You had to walk up to the truck, you had to use the move strength, and you had to press the A button exactly 100 times. And then the story promised the truck would shudder, it would move, and underneath it there was a Pokeball, and inside that Pokeball was Mew. Think about the architecture of that myth. It required a specific sequence. It required the player to have a Pokemon that had learned strength. It required faith. It had a clear visual narrative. You could not stumble upon Mew by accident. You had to earn the knowledge, and then you had to execute the ritual perfectly. The impact on a generation was profound. Every child who heard that rumor went back to their game. They did not just play it anymore. They inhabited it. They interrogated it. They tried to break it. They searched for the loose thread in the digital fabric. The S.An myth taught a generation of players that the world on the screen was bigger than the instruction manual. It taught them that secrets were hidden in plain sight. This was the engine. This was how misinformation became the primary driver for the early social virality of Pokémon. It was not just the truck. It was the rumor of Bill's Garden, a secret room full of every starter Pokémon. It was the rumor of Poke Gods, creatures beyond the 150 that were supposedly hidden deep in the code, whispers of which could be unlocked by a specific sequence of trades and captures. It was the rumor that if you caught a specific number of a common Pokémon, you could trigger event. The actual game, the one on the cartridge, was a playground, but the game, the version that existed in the collective imagination of millions of children, was a cathedral, and the high priest of that cathedral was the pink creature that almost no one had ever actually seen. And yet people claimed they seen it. There was always a kid in every school. The kid who had an older cousin who worked at Nintendo. The kid who had a friend who had seen the pink silhouette flash across the screen in Cerulean Cave. He would describe the encounter in hushed tones. Small, pink, a cat, an embryo, a ghost. He would tell you that it could turn invisible at will. That is why you could not find it. That is why it was not in the guide. The game itself could not hold it. The very programmers were afraid of it. These personal accounts were fuel on the fire. They gave the myth a face. They transformed it from a rumor into a holy grail. Why did this matter so deeply? Why did the human brain latch onto this specific type of story with such ferocity? It comes down to the psychological allure of the mythical versus the legendary. A legendary Pokémon is a king. It sits on a throne at the end of a dungeon. You can see its sprite. You can fight it. You can throw an Ultra Ball at it. It is a known quantity. It is a test of strength. It is power. A mythical Pokémon is a whisper. It is a rumor made manifest. You cannot see it because it does not want to be seen. It is not a test of power. It is a test of faith. It is proof. Proof that there is something beyond the edges of the map. Proof that the board game has a secret fourth wall. Proof that the creators were playing a deeper game with you. The mythical status makes the creature sacred. A legendary is a boss you can beat. A mythical is a truth you can never fully confirm. It exists in the liminal space between code and human sentiment. It is not a creature you catch, it is a creature you chase, and the chase itself becomes the defining experience. The rumor mill was not just breaking the game, it was building a new one, a social game, a game of trust and lies and shared hope. The truck under the S. Anne was the greatest false promise in gaming history, but it worked perfectly. It made the world feel impossibly deep. But here is the strangest part of the entire story. The rug that the entire rumor mill was sitting on was not a complete lie. It was just profoundly misunderstood. They're a secret. They're a 151st creature. The whispers were not spinning around an empty space. They were spinning around a very real, very deliberate ghost. A ghost that a single programmer snuck into the game while no one was looking. In the final days before the cartridge was sealed forever, that moment, the midnight act of creation that spawned the myth, is what we will look at next. The story of Shigeki Morimoto's secret. The rumors of a truck hiding Mew under the S and were false. But the instinct behind those rumors, the suspicion that the game held a secret beyond the official 150, that instinct was absolutely correct. There really was a ghost in the machine, and his name was Shigeki Morimoto. It was the final days of development at Game Freak, and the struggle for cartridge space was the defining crisis of the entire project. Every Game Boy cartridge had a strict limit, tiny plastic prison for code. Every sprite, every sound effect, every line of map data had to fight for its existence. The roster was locked. The Pokédex was officially closed at 150. The game was by all accounts complete. There was no room left. Morimoto was a programmer. He was not the director, Satoshi Tajiri. He was not the lead designer. He had a quiet desk and a private fascination. He had drawn a creature, a small pink feline being with large eyes and a long tail. It looked like something between an embryo and a kitten. Ancient and newborn all at once. He called it Mew. He knew the official channels were closed. Asking permission meant guaranteed rejection. So Morimoto made a quiet decision. He chose to bypass protocol completely and inject his own creation directly into the ROM, writing the code in secret without permission. A single act of digital rebellion. What made this possible was a technical miracle. The space remaining on the cartridge was practically nothing. Maybe only a few hundred bytes of scattered data, no sprawling area, no complex event script. Mew fit into a mere 300 bytes of remaining data. To understand how impossibly small this is, consider that a single modern text message can be larger. An email is massive by comparison. Mew was 300 bytes. Its sprite data, its cry, its base stats, its entire Movepool, all compressed into the digital equivalent of a single breath. A ghost built from almost nothing. The lead developers were kept entirely in the dark. They did not know the creature existed. The game went to print. The plastic cartridges were sealed. The boxes were shipped. Red and green hit the shelves of Japanese stores in February 1996. And sitting quietly inside every single cartridge was a secret that nobody in charge even knew they had allowed through. The myth of the truck was wrong, but the truth was infinitely stranger. A single programmer, working late into the final hours, had smuggled a cat into the code. The game was out. The secret was alive. But how do you find something that was never meant to be found? The answer lies not in any official map or manual. It lies in the cracks between the calculations, the error, the glitch. This specific glitch did not just expose a secret. It fundamentally changed the relationship between a player and their game. It is a story known to insiders as the glitch that changed everything. The cartridge for Pokémon Red and Green had been sealed, the code frozen in silicon. Shigeki Morimoto had done his part, threading the needle of the game's memory to hide a single creature in the fabric of the machine. For a short quiet window, Mew was a perfect secret, a ghost in the machine that no player was supposed to see. But ghosts have a way of finding the cracks in the house they haunt. The discovery of the trainer fly glitch was not an accident of fate so much as an elegant collapse of logic. The Game Boy was a simple machine. It had to be. Every action, every movement, every NPC interaction was a carefully managed shuffle of memory addresses. When a player used the move fly, the game had to remember exactly where the player was, exactly which tile they stood on, and exactly which trainer had just challenged them. This was a lot of variables for a tiny handheld processor. When a player triggered a battle with a specific trainer in Cerulean City, and then instantly used fly to warp away, the game's memory was left in a state of confusion. It did not clear the old data properly. The address that held the trainer's identification was still loaded. When that player stepped into the grass, the game tried to generate a wild Pokémon using the corrupted data from the trainer's memory. It was a broken equation. The game intended to roll a dice for a Pidgey or a Rattata, but the dice were loaded with the ghosts of the trainer's party data. And sometimes, when the alignment of memory addresses was just right, the game drew from a completely different pool of data. Data that was never meant for the wild. Data that was the genetic blueprint of the entire game. That is how the first unintended Mew encounters happened. Players did not find Mew through a rumor under a truck or a secret in a cave. They found it by forcing the game to cough up its own operating system. The code that contained every Pokémon's cry, every move's power, every sprite's color palette was suddenly being interpreted as a battle encounter, and buried deep in that code, in a slot that had no reason to exist, was the sprite of a small pink cat-like creature. The memory manipulation was elegant in its simplicity. The game was not broken. It was just being asked a question in a language it could not fully parse, and it answered with its deepest secret. The rumor did not spread through official channels. It spread through the link cable. A player in a classroom in Tokyo showing a friend a creature they had never seen before. A whispered confirmation in a game shop. The message boards of the early internet, armed with hexadecimal codes and complex step-by-step instructions. When the news reached Game Freak, the reaction was immediate and conflicted. There was panic. The developers had spent months tightening every bolt, ensuring the game was a polished experience. A programming oversight had blown the lid off their most precious hidden asset. The executives in the room saw the potential for disaster. A sloppy hack was corrupting the purity of their creation. But as the letters piled up and the sales numbers continued their impossible climb, a different emotion took hold: excitement. The glitch was not just a flaw, it was a magnet. The mystery of the 151st Pokémon was no longer a rumor, it was a provable reality. Mew existed, you could see it, you could catch it, if you knew the secret handshake of the code. The oversight had become a spontaneous gift, a secret handshake between the developers and the most dedicated players. The game was no longer just a game, it was a puzzle box, and the most obsessive players had cracked it open. The marketing department watched the frenzy. They saw the magazines running cover stories based entirely on player-submitted photographs of a glitched screen. They saw a generation of children bonded by a shared secret, and it dawned on them that they could not have engineered this if they had tried. A carefully orchestrated event would have felt manufactured, hollow. This felt like a discovery, an archaeological dig into the game's own soul. Game Freak realized they had stumbled upon the holy grail of game marketing. The players were not just consumers of the secret, they were the curators of it. The panic subsided, replaced by a quiet, strategic patience. They knew that the only way to truly own the myth was to stop trying to hide it. The glitch had changed everything. It took a creature created by a single programmer in a final moment of inspiration and made it the most famous ghost in the world. The code had spoken and the world had listened, but the story was far from over. The developers now had to face the public. They had to decide what to do with a secret that was no longer theirs alone. The pages of the biggest gaming magazine in Japan were already being prepared to answer the question, that every child was asking. Up next is Chapter 5, the CoroCoro Reveal. The previous chapter left us in the dark corners of the game's memory. We saw how a glitch in the machine allowed to coax a pink phantom into view. It was a secret the code almost refused to tell. For a few weeks, that was the only way to find Mew. Whispers on the playground, hacked cartridges, a myth sustained by a glitch. The silence from the creators themselves was deafening, but it could not hold. Then came spring, May of 1996, less than 2 months after the launch of Pocket Monsters Red and Green in Japan. The magazine CoroCoro Comic published an issue that would change the trajectory of the entire franchise. Up until that moment, the official count was fixed, 150. The game manual said so. The strategy guides said so. The entire Pokémon world had a firm, closed border at the 150th entry. Then CoroCoro opened with a headline that blew the doors off expectation. They revealed the 151st Pokémon, Mew. For the first time, the creature was not a rumor. It was printed on the page, a full color spread, the official artwork, the stats, the typing, psychic. It was real, and it was not just a reveal, it was an invitation. The magazine announced the legendary Pokémon offer, a promotion unlike anything seen in gaming at the time. 20 lucky winners would receive the first official Mew, not a toy, not a poster, the actual Pokémon. It would be uploaded directly onto their Game Boy cartridge through a special device at a Nintendo event. This was the very first official distribution. The moment Mew crossed the line from digital myth into tangible reality for a select few, the glitch had given them a glimpse. Now the prize was real ownership. Nintendo and Game Freak assumed the contest might draw a few hundred entries, perhaps 1,000 of the most dedicated fans. They were catastrophically wrong. More than 78,000 applications were cut out of magazines and mailed in. 78,000. Imagine the room that mail must have filled. That number tells you everything about the state of Pokémon. In 1996, the game was already a massive hit, but this contest revealed the depth of the obsession. Everyone wanted to be the one to possess the impossible, to own the one creature that proved they were in the know. The sheer volume of mail proved beyond any doubt that the franchise had tapped into something deeper than a passing fad. It was a cultural shift, accelerated by the mystery of the glitch, and now solidified by the absolute, undeniable legitimacy of the printed page. This was the turning point, the moment the secret stopped belonging to the dark corners of the game's memory and the rumor mills of the playground, becoming instead part of the official story. Mew was no longer a ghost in the system. It was a mascot, a prize, an icon. The transition from a glitchy rumor to an official corporate mascot did not diminish its mystique, it sanctified it. Mew was chosen. It was the hidden key granted to the faithful by a magazine competition. The creature that broke the rules of the game itself and emerged into the real world through the pages of a comic book was now a certified anchor for the entire franchise. But why Mew? Why was this particular creature singled out for such a dramatic reveal? The glitch had shown the fans where it lived in the code. The magazine showed them its face, but no one knew where it came from. The Pokédex entries were vague, new species discovered. Yet the rumors from the development team, the whispers that Morimoto had smuggled it in during the final hours of programming, suggested a deeper purpose. If you looked closely at the earliest lore, at the DNA claims in the first strategy guides and promotional materials, a pattern emerged. Mew was not just a secret, it was the foundation, the blueprint. The CoroCoro Reveal cemented Mew's place in history, but it also opened the door to the biggest questions in the Pokémon universe. If Mew was the 151st, where did it come from? What was its relationship to every other species? The answer lies in the very building blocks of life itself, in the DNA that links every Pokémon back to a single origin. That is where our journey takes us next. The truth about Mew is not just about a contest or a glitch. It is about the origin of all Pokémon, the genetic thread that ties every creature together. We will explore that deep history in the next part of this story, the biological blueprint. Those 20 winners in the spring of 1996 received something far more significant than a rare prize. They were handed a living contradiction, a creature that should not have existed in the world they knew, yet somehow did. Mew was real, and with its arrival, the entire understanding of what Pokémon could be shifted beneath the feet of every player. But what exactly had they obtained? What was this pink feline ghost that had slipped through the cracks of the game's code and into the hands of a handful of lucky children? To answer that, we have to look at Mew not as a secret, but as a statement, a biological blueprint woven into the very fabric of the Pokémon universe. Let us consider Mew's design with the kind of careful attention you might give to an ancient manuscript. At first glance, it appears simple, almost deceptively simple. A small pink creature with a long tail and large eyes. But those elements are not arbitrary. They are deliberate choices that speak to Mew's role as the origin point for all species. The feline form is immediately recognizable. The rounded ears, the whiskers, the gentle curve of the spine. Cats have long been associated with mystery, independence, and a certain otherworldly elegance in human mythology. But Mew is not merely a cat. It is something far more profound. The design deliberately blends a feline silhouette with the features of a mammalian embryo. That combination is not accidental. Think about the proportions. Mew's head is large relative to its body. Its limbs are short and stubby, its fingers almost absent. Its eyes dominate the face, huge, dark, and impossibly expressive. These are the hallmarks of a developing mammal in the earliest stages of life, a creature that has not yet fully differentiated into its adult form. In nature, embryos carry the potential for everything they will become. They are blank slates, holding the genetic instructions for an entire organism. Mew's design captures that same sense of undeveloped possibility. It looks like a creature that has not yet decided what it wants to be, and in a way, that is exactly what it is. The tail further reinforces this idea. It is long and thin, almost prehensile, curling elegantly behind it like a whip of energy. In many animals, the tail is a tool for balance or communication, but Mew's tail serves a different purpose. It is fluid and graceful, moving with a life of its own. It suggests an adaptability, a flexibility that allows Mew to navigate any environment. More than that, the tail is a symbol of continuity, a thread connecting the past to the future. It is the kind of feature you would expect from a creature that carries the genetic memory of every species that came before and every species that will follow. And then there is the colour. Pink is not a common colour in nature for mammals, yet it was chosen for Mew. Pink is the colour of raw flesh, of internal organs, of the soft tissues that sustain life. It is the colour of a newborn animal still wet from birth. It is warm and inviting, yet also vulnerable and primal. The designers could have chosen blue or green or any other hue, but they chose pink because it evokes the earliest stages of existence, the primordial soup from which all life emerges. Mew is pink because it is the biological source. It is the living memory of creation itself. This brings us to the concept of Mew as the common ancestor of all Pokémon species. Not in the way Arceus is a creator. Arceus shaped the universe and the world from cosmic forces. Mew operates on a different level. Mew is the genetic root, the DNA template from which every other Pokémon evolved. Its cells contain the complete genetic code for every known species. That is why Mew can learn almost any move. It is not a matter of intelligence or adaptability. It is a matter of inheritance. Every technique, every elemental power, every unique ability is already written into Mew's very being. It simply needs to unlock what is already there. Think about what that means. Every Pokémon you have ever encountered, from the smallest Caterpie to the mightiest Groudon, from the most common Pidgey to the rarest mythical, all of them carry a fragment of Mew within them. Mew is the thread that weaves through the entire evolutionary tree. It is the original spark that diversified into fire and water and grass and thunder. Its DNA is the library from which all subsequent species were copied, edited, and refined. When you capture a Pokémon, you are holding a descendant of Mew. When you battle with your team, you are continuing a lineage that began with this single elusive ancestor. But Mew is not just a scientific curiosity. Its design also reflects its personality. Those large, expressive eyes are not merely a feature to make it cute. They are windows into a consciousness that is both ancient and childlike. Mew is timid and shy, rarely revealing itself to humans. It prefers to vanish, to become invisible at will, to watch from the shadows. That behavior is consistent with a creature that understands its own significance. Mew knows what it carries. It knows that its genetic code is the key to everything, and so it hides, protecting itself from those who would misuse that knowledge. The scientists who created Mewtwo learned that lesson the hard way. When you look at Mew, you are looking at the biological print for an entire world. Every curve of its body, every shade of pink, every flick of that long thin tail is a message. It says, "I am the beginning. I am the source. Everything you know flows from me." And yet Mew remains playful, curious, almost innocent. It is a creature of paradox, an infant and a patriarch, a secret and a revelation, a ghost and the flesh of every living thing. That is the genius of its design. It contains multitudes. Now that we understand the physical form, we can begin to explore what lies beneath the surface. What does it mean for a single creature to hold the DNA of all creation? And how did that genetic inheritance shape the most famous clone in the Pokémon world? The answers are written in the double helix itself, waiting to be unraveled. That story begins with the discovery of Mew's DNA, a discovery that would change everything we thought we knew about the origin of life in the Pokémon universe. The next chapter dives deep into that molecular secret, into the very substance that makes Mew the ultimate ancestor. It is a story of science and mystery, of creation and consequence. And it all comes down to one thing: the DNA of everything. If Mew's physical form suggests a creature that never truly grew up, a being kept in a state of permanent potential, then its true magnitude isn't in its body at all. It is in its code, the DNA, the Pokédex entry we have all read, the one that feels less like a scientific observation and more like a sacred axiom, states that Mew contains the genetic sequence of every single Pokémon species. Not some, not most. Every single life form in the known world. A single strand of Mew's double helix supposedly holds the instructions for a Magikarp, a Charizard, a Geodude, a Ghastly. Everything solid, everything gaseous, everything aquatic. This is not simply evolutionary biology as we understand it. This is a biological library of Alexandria. It places Mew in a fascinating position within the creation myth of the Pokémon universe. Arceus may have forged the cosmos, the fabric of time and space, the very matter of the universe, but Mew is the ingredient list. It is the periodic table of Pokémon life, the raw recipe book that all subsequent life drew from. And if you look closely at this claim, you realize it isn't just a power, it's a responsibility, a weight. Let us sit with the scientific impossibility for a moment. If Pokédex entries were subject to earthly physics, this claim would be an astronomical absurdity. In our world, a single cell cannot contain the specific programming of every other cell. DNA is not a universal library. It is a specific optimized instruction manual for a specific species. A rose bush cannot suddenly generate the code for an oak tree. The storage space alone would be a nightmare, an impossible compression of data. The genome of an organism is precisely tailored to it. It discards what is unnecessary. But the Pokémon world does not play by earthly rules. This is a universe where energy can be compressed into a spherical device, smaller than a fist, where creatures can materialize from light and data. What if Mew's DNA operates on a principle we do not have a scientific name for? A biological quantum state where the potential of all life exists simultaneously, not as specific letters in a sequence, but as a probability wave of form. It isn't merely a strand of molecules. It is a statement of intent, a record of everything life has ever been and everything it could still become. Mew is the living proof that physics in this world bends to the whims of possibility. This universal code is the exact reason Mew holds a record that remains unmatched. It can learn almost every technical machine, every technical record, every move tutor secret in existence. Why? Because its body can theoretically restructure itself to access the power source of any species. Physical limitations simply do not apply. A Growlithe cannot learn Surf because its specific body is not wired to withstand that particular elemental energy. Its cells reject the water. A Magneton cannot learn Fire Blast because its metallic composition would melt from the inside out. But Mew operates on the absolute baseline hardware. It can run any program. It never discarded the potential for specialization. It retained the raw source code of the entire operating system. Every move Mew learns is a biological echo of another species. When it uses Thunderbolt, it is briefly accessing the genetic signature of a Pikachu. When it uses Psychic, it taps into the raw neural potential that an Alakazam spent generations perfecting. It is the ultimate polymath because it never committed to a single discipline. It borrowed a little from everyone, and because it was first, it owns the rights to everything. Philosophically, this is a dizzying concept. The idea of a source code for biological life permeates our own world's mythology and science fiction. The search for the last universal common ancestor, a single organism billions of years ago that split into the tree of life today. Mew is that ancestor but made manifest, a conscious, breathing, playful last universal common ancestor. What does it mean to be the source code? It means you are no longer just an individual. You are a vessel for the entire system. Mew is not just a Pokémon, it is the Pokémon. The very idea of Pokémon-ness given form and emotion. There is a strange loneliness in that, to be everything, and yet perhaps to be nothing in particular, to have no unique identity, because you are the root identity of all things. Does Mew know it holds these codes? Is it aware of its own infinitude, or does it simply exist? Playing in the jungle, occasionally turning invisible, carrying the weight of an entire genetic tree, without ever pausing to understand the burden. If Mew is the source code, the biological root of all life in this world, the question naturally becomes a geographical one. Where does the source code reside? Where does a creature like this actually come from? When it is not hiding in the basement of a Cerulean cave, the birthplace of Mew is a mystery cocooned in the deepest lore. Legends and scattered scientific records point to a specific region, a place of staggering biodiversity, of ancient, untouched jungles, where life evolved in a riot of colour and competition. A continent in the Pokémon world that holds secrets we have barely scratched the surface of. The scientists who first discovered Mew did not find it in a sterile lab. They found it in the wild, deep in the South American jungle. They found a piece of the original code, living in the leaves and the mud and the canopy. But how did it get there? What was guarding that specific patch of the genome? And what else was left behind in the frantic scramble to extract the sample that would eventually become Mewtwo? The soil of that jungle holds the answer to where everything began, and the next step of this journey takes us deep into that excavation, into the heart of the South American connection. The previous chapter explored the idea that Mew contains the genetic code of every Pokémon, a claim that stretches the limits of biology and logic. But if that code is a blueprint, then where did the blueprint come from? The answer, it turns out, lies not in the labs of Kanto or the distant stars of the Pokémon universe, but in the dense, humid jungles of a place that sounds far more like our own world than the one we thought we knew. The year is 1996, or perhaps earlier. In the lore of the games, a time when scientists were just beginning to understand the true depth of what they had found on a small island off the coast of Cinnabar. You might remember the Pokémon Mansion, that crumbling, eerie structure on Cinnabar Island where fire-type trainers once gathered. Inside, among the scattered notes and abandoned equipment, there are diary entries. They aren't easy to find, hidden in the back rooms, written in a hasty, almost frantic hand. They speak of a creature glimpsed in the wild, something small and pink, with eyes that seem to hold an ancient intelligence. The entries are cryptic, but one phrase stands out. The creature was first sighted in the deep jungles of Guyana, a real country in South America, on the northeastern coast of the continent, bordered by the Amazon rainforest. Why would the Pokémon world, a world of pocket monsters and Pokeballs, include a real-world location in its earliest lore? This isn't accidental. The developers, including Shigeki Morimoto and Satoshi Tajiri, were deeply influenced by their childhood fascination with nature and exploration. They wanted the origin of the first Pokémon to feel grounded, tied to a place that existed on our own maps, as if to say, this creature was not born in a lab or on a game cartridge, but discovered in the wild, hidden from civilization. The diary entries describe an expedition, a small team of scientists who ventured deep into those jungles, following rumors of a mysterious being that could become invisible, that left no trace but a faint glow in the undergrowth. They tracked it for weeks, using thermal imaging and DNA probes, piecing together evidence from leaf patterns and disturbed soil. And then one night, by a riverbank under a canopy of towering ceiba trees, they saw it, Mew. Not a drawing, not a glitch, but a living, breathing creature, floating inches above the mud, its tail curled like a question mark. The scientists were stunned. It looked almost like a cat, yet somehow embryonic, with large expressive eyes that seemed to watch them with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. They managed to collect a single sample, a tiny piece of shed skin, and from that sample they extracted something extraordinary, a genome unlike anything ever recorded. It contained sequences that matched species from across the world, from Magikarp to Charizard, from Pidgey to Dragonite. It was as if Mew carried the memory of every Pokémon that would ever exist, a biological library hidden in the rainforest. But the dark history of these scientists cannot be ignored. They were not explorers in the noble sense. They were researchers funded by a shadowy organization, perhaps connected to what would become Team Rocket, or maybe just a private consortium hungry for power. They tracked the creature for research. Yes, but their true goal was to capture it, to unlock its secrets for their own ends. The diary entries hint at arguments, at ethical compromises, at a determination that bordered on obsession. When they finally cornered Mew near a cave system, it used its invisibility, slipping away into the air as if it were never there. The scientists returned empty-handed, but they had the DNA, and with that, they could build their own Mew. This is the dark thread that runs through the discovery. The first Mew was a wild thing, free and elusive, and its capture for science was a violation, a theft of its genetic legacy. That stolen blueprint would later be used to create Mewtwo, the clone, the weapon, the mirror that reflects everything wrong with human ambition. Now you understand why the Pokémon Mansion on Cinnabar Island holds those diary entries. They are a record of that expedition, a confession written by scientists who knew they had crossed a line. The mansion itself is a relic of that era, a place where the fires of curiosity burned too hot, consuming the scientists' ethics along with their data. When you read those entries today, in the game, you are reading the truth about Mew's origin. It came not from a distant galaxy or a mythical dimension, but from the real world, a jungle in Guyana, a place you could visit if you had the money and the courage. And that connection, that grounding in our own geography, is why the Pokémon world feels so vivid, so possible. It reminds us that the most extraordinary stories often begin in the most ordinary places. As we move toward the next chapter, the story takes a darker turn. The DNA from that South American expedition did not remain in the jungle. It was transported, studied, and eventually handed over to a team of geneticists who would attempt something that had never been done before. To create a being stronger, smarter, and more powerful than Mew itself. That project would come to be known as the Birth of Mewtwo, and it would change everything. But that is a story for another night. For now, rest with the image of that tiny pink creature, floating invisible above a river in the deep jungle, watching the scientists who came to steal its secrets, and then vanishing, leaving only a trace of fairy dust in the moonlight. The diary entries from the Pokémon Mansion on Cinnabar Island tell a specific story. They tell of a journey into the deep jungles of Guyana, of the discovery of a newborn Mew, and of its return. But a diary also implies a diarist, and a discovery implies a purpose. The scientists who found Mew didn't just want to study it, they wanted to use it. For months, they observed. They documented the creature's playful teleportation, its ability to turn invisible at the edge of vision. But observation was never the end goal. The project had a name. It wasn't the Mew Observation Project. It was simply the Mew Project, and its objective was to unlock the secrets of Mew's DNA to manufacture life itself. The cloning project began in earnest. The first step was extraction. Mew's cells, its genetic material, were the raw ingredients. The scientists understood that Mew's DNA held the blueprint for every Pokémon. If they could isolate the sequences that created that power, they could potentially create a new being, a superior being. But they didn't want a copy. They wanted an upgrade. They took Mew's core genome and began splicing it. They introduced sequences to amplify psychic potential, to harden the will, to strip away the playful innocence and create a weapon. The logs are fragmented, but surviving documents suggest the design philosophy was terrifying in its simplicity. Mew was shy. Mew was curious. Mew was content to hide. The new being needed to be none of those things. It needed to be dominant. It needed to be aggressive. It needed to be the absolute pinnacle of Pokémon evolution. It was to be the superior version of the original. They called it Mewtwo. The road to Mewtwo was paved with failure. The first clones were unstable. The game lore and the hints from the original movie both point to this horrifying truth. The mansion's basement, or the hidden laboratory beneath it, became a graveyard of failed subjects. Imagine the tanks, tubes of green liquid bubbling with life. The first clones didn't survive the birthing process. Their bodies rejected the accelerated growth factor. Their minds were overwhelmed by the psychic noise of 1,000 other Pokémon screams locked in the DNA. There are logs in the Japanese version of the game that speak of subjects dying immediately or losing consciousness permanently. The discarded prototypes, the nightmares of a creator who refused to stop playing God. But they kept refining, they kept pushing. The data from every failure improved the algorithm of the next attempt. And finally, after countless genetic ghosts, the tank settled. The light stopped flickering. A being opened its eyes. This was Mewtwo, the perfect clone. Mew was born in a jungle, blinking up at a curious world, treated with awe by the humans who found it. Mewtwo was born in a sterile room, ripped from a dreamless sleep into a nightmare of flashing lights and cold machinery. Mew plays. Mewtwo questions. Mew hides. Mewtwo destroys. The contrast between the two could not be starker. Mew represents the natural world. It is the original spark, curious and free. Mewtwo represents scientific hubris. It is the spark that was commanded to burn, and it is deeply, profoundly angry at the hand that lit the match. Mew's innocence is a product of its ignorance of its own power. Mewtwo's cynicism is a product of the total awareness of its own creation. It knows it is a weapon. It knows it was made to be superior. It despises the world that demanded its existence. This is the core tragedy of the Mew Duo. The ancestor never asked for a successor. The clone never asked to be born. Mew's DNA didn't just create a being, it created a mirror, a dark reflection of what happens when innocence is weaponized. The mansion fell silent after Mewtwo broke free. The scientists were scattered, or worse. The project was abandoned, sealed behind locked doors. But the story of Mewtwo's birth is intrinsically tied to the man who orchestrated it all, a grief-stricken researcher who went into the jungle and emerged with a god. His name was Mr. Fuji, and his role in this tragedy is far more complex than simple ambition allows. We will explore the heartbreak and the guilt that drove him next in our chapter on the mystery of Mr. Fuji. The birth of Mewtwo was not a triumphant breakthrough. It was a rupture, a tear in the natural ord that left the island of Cinnabar haunted long after the last lights went out in the laboratory. The facility was sealed, its deepest secrets buried under volcanic ash and official silence. But the man who orchestrated that entire operation did not simply vanish into the footnotes of history. He walked away from the science. He walked away from the fame, from the responsibility of what he had unleashed. And he walked directly towards the one place in Kanto that dedicates itself entirely to death. Before we understand why he chose Lavender Town, we have to understand who he truly was. His name was Mr. Fuji. The diaries scattered across the Pokémon mansion were written by a man possessed by the purest form of discovery. The expedition to the deep jungles of Guyana, the awe of finding Mew hidden in the foliage of South America, the sheer incomprehensible wonder of its DNA. This man, the author of those crumbling pages, was not merely a Team Rocket scientist following orders. He was the visionary. He was the one who saw Mew's genetic code, not as a curiosity to be catalogued, but as a lock waiting for the right key. He believed he was unlocking the very future of all Pokémon kind. He believed he was creating a perfect being, and in a limited, terrible way, he was right. Mewtwo was perfect in terms of raw power and purpose, but Mr. Fuji never fully accounted for the soul. He forgot that creating life carries a debt that cannot be paid with grant money or scientific acclaim. It can only be paid in grief. This is the hidden connection between the sterile white halls of the Cinnabar lab and the solemn, mist-shrouded steps of the Pokémon Tower. The laboratory was built to tear life down to its molecular components, to rewrite the blueprint of existence. The tower exists to house what remains when that life is finally spent. Fuji spent his days in the laboratory splicing the genes of a god. He now spends his days in Lavender Town, burying the mistakes of humanity. He moved into a small home right next to the graveyard, a house of memories that the player can walk into and feel the shift in atmosphere. In the games, the music changes when you enter his home. The world softens. He is the keeper of the Pokémon graveyard. He is the one who comforts the spirit of the Mother Marowak, giving that lost soul the closure it deserves. He is the one who hands the player the key to Silph Co, setting them on a path to confront his former employers. Every single good deed he performs is a careful, desperate attempt to balance the cosmic scale that he himself tipped over. He is not a villain in the traditional sense. He is a cautionary tale carved from guilt. He took the genetic gifts of Mew, the playful ancestor of all Pokémon, the creature that had existed for millennia in perfect, invisible balance with the world, and he weaponized them. He turned pure innocence into a tool of conflict. He looked into the eyes of a playful, curious, invisible being and saw only potential, only raw material. The guilt he carries is the accumulated weight of Mewtwo's entire existence. Every nightmare Mewtwo has, every village it destroys in its confusion and rage, every tear it sheds over its own unnatural loneliness, Mr. Fuji feels the echo of that pain. He knows that agony was written by his own hand on the double helix of Mew's DNA. He sold a piece of his own soul for a scientific miracle, and the interest on that debt is an eternity of quiet regret. But Mr. Fuji's redemption is not a simple transaction. He does not wear his shame openly. He hides it beneath the robes of a kind old man who hands out Pokémon to passing children. He trains young trainers to understand the fragility of life. He understands the value of connection because he knows what it is to violate it. He helps others find peace because he knows, deep in his bones, that he will never fully find it for himself. His true punishment is to live with the memory of what he did and to spend every remaining day trying to become the exact opposite of the man he was. In that laboratory on Cinnabar Island, he traded the roar of creation for the silence of a tombstone. And while Fuji tries to quiet the ghosts of the past through these acts of quiet kindness, the creature he built is awakening to the harsh realities of the present. Mewtwo is no longer a prisoner of amber and saline. It is a consciousness without a context, a mind of immense power that does not yet know what to do with its own freedom. It will not stay hidden in the caves of the world forever. The clone is growing, and with its growth comes a fundamental question that threatens to redefine the entire relationship between humans and the Pokémon they command. A question that leads directly to the throne of the psychic sovereign, Mr. Fuji's story ended in the quiet of Lavender Town, a place where ghosts of the past and regrets linger like incense smoke. But the being he helped create, Mewtwo, was never the true heart of the original mystery. That heart belonged to Mew itself. And as we step away from the human drama, we must turn to the creature who watched it all from the shadows, or rather from nowhere at all. Why was Mew assigned the psychic type? In Generation I, psychic Pokémon were nearly unstoppable. They had no real weakness. Bug types were pitifully weak, ghost types were bugged and ineffective, and the only counter, dark types, didn't exist yet. A psychic Pokémon in those original games was a force of nature, a living loophole in the game's design. And yet, into that unbalanced world, the developers placed a Pokémon that wasn't just psychic. It was the archetype of the psychic itself. Mew's typing wasn't an accident, it was a statement. While Alakazam, Starmie and Mewtwo wielded psychic power as a weapon, Mew embodied it as a state of being. Its tiny kitten-like form contains a mind that can bend reality. The psychic type traditionally represents mental prowess, telekinesis, and extrasensory perception. But Mew takes it further. It represents the pure, unfiltered potential of consciousness. It doesn't need to attack with its mind, because its mind is already everything. That's why, despite its playful demeanor, Mew was given the same type as the most overpowered creatures in the game's history. It was a subtle way of saying, this is the source. This is where that power began. And yet Mew rarely uses that power in front of humans. In fact, it's almost impossible to see Mew at all. The lore behind its invisibility is rooted in its shy, almost feral nature. According to the Pokédex entries from numerous generations, Mew can become invisible at will, slipping out of sight whenever it senses human presence. This isn't a combat tactic, it's a survival instinct. Mew is not aggressive. It's curious, yes, but deeply wary. It wants to observe, not be observed. The invisibility is a curtain it draws between itself and a world that would try to capture, clone, or exploit it. Think about that. The most genetically valuable being in existence, the ancestor of all Pokémon, chooses to hide not because it's weak, but because it understands the danger of being seen. This trait reveals something profound about Mew's personality. It is playful, yes. It will appear to children, or in moments of pure innocence, as shown in the first movie, when it plays with a bouquet of flowers. But beneath that childlike joy lies an ancient wisdom. Mew is not naive. It has lived long enough to know that humans, for all their wonder, are also capable of great harm. Its invisibility is a boundary, a sacred line it refuses to let be crossed. And when that line is breached, when a threat emerges that cannot be ignored, the playful mask falls away. That's the paradox of Mew. It looks like a tiny pink embryo, something you might hold in your hands, but its power rivals that of creator deities. In later generations, Game Freak finally gave Mew a signature move that makes this explicit: Genesis Supernova. This is no ordinary psychic attack. When Mew uses Genesis Supernova, it creates a new star, a small, localized supernova that erupts with the force of a cosmic birth. The move was introduced in Generation 7 as part of Mew's exclusive Z move. The name itself is a declaration: Genesis, the beginning; Supernova, the end. In one move, Mew embodies both creation and destruction. Think about the implications. A star is a fusion reactor, a furnace of hydrogen and helium that forges elements. When a supernova explodes, it scatters those elements across the universe, seeding new worlds. Genesis Supernova is Mew recreating that process on a miniature scale. It is a move that says, I am not just a Pokémon, I am a force of cosmology. The fact that this power hides behind a playful smile and a pink tail is terrifying in the most beautiful way. And yet, even with this cosmic might, Mew remains a psychic type, because the psychic type in Generation I wasn't just about power, it was about mystery. The game's original 150 Pokémon were largely based on real animals, plants, and mythical creatures. But Mew was something else. It was a blank slate, a cipher. By giving it the Psychic type, the developers tied it directly to the unknown, to the mind's ability to reach beyond the physical. Mew doesn't need to be a dragon or a fairy. It doesn't need elemental fury. It simply thinks and reality obeys. That's why, when you look at the dominance of Jenny's psychics, Mew stands at the top not as the strongest. Mewtwo holds that title, but as the origin. Psychic power in the Pokémon world began with Mew. It was the first mind to awaken to its own potential, and from that mind, every other psychic type descended, carrying traces of that original spark. In a way, Mew's invisibility is a metaphor for its role in the lore. It is always there, hidden in the code, hidden in the genetics, hidden in the background of every story. But when you finally see it, when it chooses to reveal itself, you understand that you were never looking at the full picture. You were only seeing the world Mew allowed you to see. And that raises a question that has lingered since the earliest days of the franchise. If Mew is the genetic ancestor of all Pokémon, and if its power can create stars, where does that leave the being who supposedly created the universe itself? What happens when the ancestor meets the architect? That conflict, that paradox, is one of the deepest unsolved mysteries in Pokémon lore, and it leads directly to a name that has haunted fans for decades. A name that represents the ultimate contradiction between creation and evolution. But that story, the one about the alpha Pokémon and the original one, is a tale for another chapter. For now, let us rest with Mew, invisible and eternal, watching over a world it helped begin. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious. Where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. From the previous chapter, we saw how Mew was assigned the Psychic type, a classification that seemed to align with its elusive and almost ethereal nature. Its ability to become invisible will only deepen the sense that Mew exists on the edge of perception, a creature that is present but never quite fully seen. But this invisibility is more than just a physical trait. It mirrors the larger obscurity surrounding Mew's place in the Pokémon universe. For all that we have discussed about its genetic code being the blueprint for all life, there is a lingering question that challenges the very foundation of this claim. How can Mew be the genetic ancestor of all Pokémon when there is another being, one of immense power and cosmic significance, who is said to have created the universe itself? This is the Arceus Paradox. Mew's invisibility is a metaphor for the uncertainty that surrounds its origins. While we have explored the idea that Mew contains the DNA of every Pokémon, suggesting it is the common ancestor, this narrative collides with another story, the saga of Arceus. In the Pokémon world, Arceus is often revered as the creator, the being who shaped the universe and brought existence into being. So how can Mew be the ancestor if Arceus is the creator? This is the heart of the paradox that has fueled fan debates for years. To understand this, we must separate the concepts of biological ancestry and cosmic creation. Biological ancestry is the idea of a common genetic origin, where all species share a lineage through DNA. In this context, Mew is the progenitor, the source genome from which all Pokémon diversified. On the other hand, cosmic creation addresses the ultimate origin of existence itself. Arceus is said to have emerged from an egg in the void and then shaped the world with its 1,000 arms. These two narratives are not necessarily contradictory if we view them as operating on different scales. Arceus creates the universe, and within that universe, Mew serves as the genetic foundation for life. In the hierarchy of the Pokémon universe, Arceus stands at the top as the creator deity. It is beyond the physical and cosmic realms. Meanwhile, Mew is the biological root, the evolutionary baseline from which all life forms diverge. They complement each other. Arceus provides the canvas, and Mew provides the paint. One is the architect of reality, the other is the blueprint of biology. This allows them to coexist without conflict. Mew's DNA is not the beginning of everything, but the beginning of everything that lives. Arceus is the beginning of everything that is. This brings us to a fan-favourite theory known as the egg theory. The question of which came first, the egg or the Pokémon, is particularly relevant here. In some interpretations, Arceus hatched from an egg, which itself contained the potential for all creation. But if the egg holds the DNA of all life, then perhaps Mew is the essence within that egg. The egg theory suggests that the first being was an egg, and from that egg hatched either Arceus or Mew, or perhaps both in a symbiotic cycle. It becomes a paradox of origin, where the beginning is both a being and a concept. Some fans propose that the order of events in the Pokémon universe goes back to a primordial egg. This egg could be seen as the source of all DNA, and from it emerged Mew as the first life form. But if Arceus hatched from this egg, then Arceus and Mew might share the same origin. This creates a circular causality, where the creator and the ancestor are interlinked. It challenges linear thinking, suggesting that in the Pokémon world, creation is not a straight line, but a loop. The egg theory is a way to reconcile the two narratives, making them part of a larger cosmic cycle. Ultimately, the Arceus Paradox is a question of perspective. In the grand tapestry of Pokémon lore, both Mew and Arceus hold essential roles. Mew represents the continuity of life, the genetic thread that weaves through every species. Arceus represents the spark that ignited existence. Their stories are not in competition, but are chapters in a greater narrative. This brings us closer to understanding the true nature of creation in the Pokémon world. And as we move forward, we will see how this creative energy manifested in other ways. The conflict between genetics and divinity lays the groundwork for a story that would bring these themes to life in a very personal confrontation. That story is none other than the first movie, a cinematic icon which redefined how Mew and its place in the Pokémon universe. Having placed Mew in its proper cosmic context as the biological heart of the Pokémon world, rather than its hand and foot creator, the question naturally shifts from where Mew came from into what Mew actually does when it needs to act. And there is no greater stage for that question than the 1998 anime film. The movie presents a philosophical battleground. Mewtwo, the clone born from Mew's stolen DNA, rejects humanity in its own original form. It creates an army of shadow clones, a perfect army to prove that the copies are superior to the originals. Into this storm of identity, rage and existential crisis steps Mew, not as a conqueror, not as a god descending from the heavens to smite the rebellious child, but as the silent protagonist who never speaks a single line of dialogue throughout the entire event. Mew communicates entirely through action, through expression, and through its psychic presence. It does not try to out-argue Mewtwo with rhetoric, it simply arrives. Where Mewtwo is defined by his explosive words and internal turmoil, Mew is defined by its quiet curiosity and unshakable calm. It is the answer to Mewtwo's questions, not another question thrown onto the pile. Its silence is its authority. The film gives us a breathtaking contrast, a few moments before everything goes wrong. Mew is seen floating through a lush greenhouse, surrounded by flowers, riding on psychic bubbles that carry it weightlessly through the air. It moves like a very young child, without a care in the universe. It is pure, unfiltered prelapsarian innocence. This is Mew's natural state. When it arrives at New Island, it brings this exact playfulness into a world of shattered glass, raging storms, and clashing titans. The tonal clash is deliberate and striking. You have a creature of pure joy walking into a war zone, and it does not change its behavior to match the environment. It flips and floats around Mewtwo's attacks, casually dodging devastation as if it were a game. It is not mocking the battle. It is simply refusing to let the chaos define its spirit. This is the core of Mew's character. It is immune to the corruption of conflict. Now this leads to a question that many fans have wondered about for decades. Why does Mew, a a Pokémon that can learn every single move in existence, that can turn invisible at will, and teleport across continents, choose to engage Mewtwo in a straight fight using only basic psychic attacks. It does not use its vast arsenal. It does not disappear into thin air. It stands toe-to-toe with its clone and fights at the exact same level. The reason is layered and deeply profound. Mew does not see Mewtwo as an enemy to be destroyed. Mew sees Mewtwo as a child. Mew is the original template, the parent of the entire Pokédex. Mewtwo is its direct descendant, its genetic offspring. A parent does not vaporize a child to prove a point. A parent endures the tantrum until the child is calm enough to listen. Mew's entire fighting style in the movie is a lesson in restraint. It blocks, it dodges, it matches Mewtwo's power exactly enough to protect itself and the other Pokémon who are caught in the crossfire. It never goes on the offensive for the kill. It is waiting for the storm to pass. Mew is proving that true strength does not come from overwhelming power, but from the wisdom to hold that power in perfect check. And then the storm does not pass gently. Mewtwo's ultimate attack creates a cataclysm that nearly erases everyone. The trainers throw themselves between the fighting, and Ash Ketchum is turned to stone. All the clones and the original Pokémon surround him, weeping. And in this moment, Mew's expression shifts for the first time. The playful smile disappears. The curiosity fades. What is left is pure, overwhelming empathy. Mew approaches the petrified boy. It understands that the cycle of conflict has gone too far. It understands that the life of a human child, a child who cared enough to stand in the middle of the battle without a weapon, has been sacrificed, and Mew cries. These tears become the tears of life, a golden light that resurrects Ash and restores the island to peace. This is not a technical move. This is not a special ability Mew activated from a list. This is the raw essence of the original Pokémon, the concentrated life force of the genetic progenitor of all species, weeping for the pain caused by its own legacy. The emotional weight of this scene lands entirely because of the contrast the film set up so carefully. The playful, immortal creature is suddenly moved to genuine sorrow. Mew is not a distant god floating in the void. It feels the failure of its clone. It takes responsibility for the chaos its DNA unleashed upon the world. The tears are physical proof that Mew carries the heart of the entire world on its tiny frame. After the healing is done, Mew looks at the revived Ash, gives a tiny, knowing smile, and vanishes. It does not stay to take credit. It returns to the shadows, leaving Mewtwo to find his own peace on its own terms. Mew's story is often painted as one of complete isolation, a single being floating through time and space, without any deep connection to the larger myths. But the movie was not its only deep engagement with the legends of the Pokémon world. Just as Mewtwo emerged from its DNA, there is another thread, an ancient thread, that binds Mew to a different kind of power. A power related not just to the genetic code, but to the very flow of life energy itself. A connection to a Pokémon from the Riolu family line that predates the modern world entirely. A bond that suggests Mew understood the flow of time and the nature of aura in ways that the movie on New Island barely hinted at. This tale bridges the gap between Mew as a biological blueprint and Mew as a creature of pure ancient myth. Let us follow that bond. Let us leave the Battle of New Island behind and walk deep into the past. This is Chapter 14, the Lucario Connection. We watched Mew drift through the chaos of New Island, floating on bubbles, a silent witness to destruction it never wanted. That movie showed us one side of Mew, the playful, almost childlike spirit that intervenes only when the balance tips too far. But there is another story, another film, that reveals a far older, deeper connection between Mew and the very planet it inhabits. This is the tale told in Lucario and the Mystery of Mew, and it changes everything we thought we knew about the original Pokémon. If the first movie was about Mew as a reluctant hero, then the 8th Pokémon film is about Mew as an ancient guardian. The setting is the Tree of Beginning, not a cave or an island, but a living organism that breathes and pulses with energy. This tree is not simply a location, it is a sanctuary, a heart, a homeland for Mew. In this story, Mew is not a hidden creature fleeing human contact. Mew is the caretaker of an entire ecosystem, a creature woven into the fabric of life itself. The Tree of Beginning is described as a massive crystalline structure that stretches toward the sky. Its branches formed from shimmering green veins of energy. It is alive in a way that no ordinary tree could be. Its roots reach deep into the earth, drawing nutrients from the planet, but also giving back something vital. It is a symbiotic relationship, a shared breath between the tree and the world. And at the center of this relationship is Mew. In this film, Mew is not just a resident of the tree. Mew is the tree's companion, its pulse, its immune system. When a threat emerges, whether a damaged ecosystem or an intruder who disrupts the balance, Mew acts almost instinctively. It patrols the tree, heals its wounds, and even plays with the creatures that live within its branches. But this playfulness is not mere frivolity. It is a form of maintenance. Mew's energy bathes the tree, and the tree in turn sustains Mew. Think of Mew as a kind of planetary white blood cell. Just as our bodies send cells to fight infection or repair damage, Mew seems to travel the ancient world, seeking out places where the natural order has been disturbed. The Tree of Beginning is one such node, a concentration of life so dense that it requires constant attention. Mew's presence there is not accidental, it is purposeful, and this is where Lucario enters the story. Lucario, the Aura Pokémon, has a unique ability to sense the life force of other beings, an energy called aura. In the film, Lucario is awakened after centuries of sleep, bound by a sense of betrayal from its former master, Sir Aaron. But as the story unfolds, Lucario learns that Sir Aaron sacrificed himself to save the Tree of Beginning, and by extension, the entire region. Mew was there, watching, protecting, and eventually bonding with Lucario. The connection between Mew and Lucario is not a battle for dominance, but a meeting of guardians. Mew represents the ancient, almost inscrutable power of nature, while Lucario represents the disciplined understanding of that power. Together, they restore the tree which had begun to wither because of a poisoned crystal that threatened to shut down its life force. The climax of the film reveals something profound. The Tree of Beginning is not just a home for Mew, it is Mew's body in a sense. Mew's DNA, the same blueprint that contains the genes of every Pokémon, is intertwined with the tree's own cellular structure. When the tree is sick, Mew is sick. When the tree heals, Mew thrives. This is the symbiotic relationship that Mew has with the ancient ecosystem of the world. Mew is not merely a creature that lives in the world lives through Mew. In that sense, Mew's role as the genetic ancestor takes on a new dimension. It is not just a historical fact buried in fossil records. It is an active, ongoing relationship. Every time a new ecosystem develops, every time a forest regrows, or a volcano reshapes a landscape, Mew is there invisibly, its energy flowing through the roots, the waters, the air. Mew is the original immune response of the planet. The Tree of Beginning serves as a sanctuary not only because it is hidden, but because it is a place where the bond between Mew and life is most visible. The crystal veins that pulse through its trunk are like the capillaries of a giant heart, and Mew floats through them like a red blood cell, delivering vitality, absorbing toxins, and keeping the ancient organism alive. This is the Mew that the first movie only hinted at, a being not just of mystery, but of responsibility. Mew is not a god in the way Arceus is a god. Arceus created the universe. Mew cares for it. It nurtures it. It is the gardener of the Pokémon world, the silent tender of its oldest wounds. And yet even in this role, Mew remains elusive. In the film, it appears to Lucario and the other characters only when it chooses. It plays, it hides, it teases. Mew is never fully understood, and that is by design. The mystery is part of its function. The less humans know about how Mew works, the less they can interfere with its ancient task. So when we watch Mew in Lucario and the Mystery of Mew, a creature that is both playful and profound, it can laugh and dance with a young girl named Kid, but it can also stand at the root of a dying tree, and pour its own energy into saving it. Mew is not just the ancestor of all Pokémon, it is the living memory of the planet, the keeper of its oldest rhythms. And that brings us to a question that fans have debated for years. How exactly does Mew know how to do everything it does? How can it heal a tree, fight off threats, and still have time to play with visitors? The answer lies in its mastery of moves, a subject that continues to define Mew's place in the Pokémon universe. In the next chapter, we will explore that mastery in full, uncovering how Mew's unique ability to learn almost any move is not just a game mechanic, but a reflection of its role as the original blueprint for all life. From the Tree of Beginning, we witnessed Mew's sanctuary, a living organism, a vast biological network that pulsed with ancient energy. That tree was not just a home, it was a reflection of Mew's very essence, a creature whose DNA is a library of all life, a being that exists as the genetic blueprint for every Pokémon species. But if Mew is the ultimate ancestor, what does that mean when we look at its abilities? How does a creature that holds the code for all moves actually express that power in battle? The answer lies in the mastery of moves, a mastery that is almost total, yet deliberately incomplete. Consider the technical machine, the device that teaches a Pokémon a new attack. Most Pokémon can only learn a fraction of the moves available across the generations. Even legendary Pokémon like Mewtwo or Rayquaza are limited to certain types of moves, bound by their elemental nature. Mew, however, stands alone. It is the ultimate technical machine user. Across every generation, from the original Red and Green to the present day, Mew can learn almost every single technical machine, every hidden machine, every move tutor move. Its Movepool is the largest of any Pokémon, a dizzying array of hundreds of techniques spanning all 17 types. This is not a coincidence. The lore states that Mew's DNA contains the genetic sequence of every Pokémon species. That means it carries the potential for every type of energy, every physical strike, every status trick. When you give Mew a technical machine, it reads the data and instantly unlocks that move, because the blueprint was already there, dormant, waiting to be activated. But why almost every move? There are a handful of attacks that Mew cannot learn, and one stands out as particularly telling. Volt Tackle. This is the signature move of Pichu and its evolved forms, an electric type attack that delivers a devastating blow, but also leaves the user with recoil damage. Volt Tackle is not a technical machine. It is an egg move, passed down only through breeding, and for a very specific reason. It requires the genetic memory of a Pichu raised with a light ball, a unique inherited trait that cannot be taught. Mew, for all its genetic versatility, cannot learn Volt Tackle because that move is tied to a very specific lineage. A lineage that Mew, as the ancestor, may have originated, but cannot replicate without the physical experience of being born from a Pichu family. It is a small, deliberate gap in Mew's otherwise perfect move pool, a reminder that even the original blueprint cannot copy every nuance of every descendant's life. This mastery of moves gives Mew an extraordinary strategic value in competitive play across different eras. In the early days of Pokémon, Generation 1, Mew wasn't even officially obtainable through normal gameplay. Those who did get it through glitches or events discovered a monster that could learn nearly everything. Its base stats are perfectly balanced, 100 in every category: HP attack, defense, special attack, special defense, speed. That number 100 reflects its balanced nature. Mew is neither a fragile sweeper nor a bulky wall. It is a blank slate, a jack of all trades. In Generation 2, when the metagame began to favour specialised attackers, Mew could adapt to any role. A calm minesweeper, a baton pass support, a defensive pivot with soft-boiled. In Generation 4, when physical and special attack were finally split, Mew's balanced stats meant it could use both sets effectively. In every era, Mew was never the absolute best at any single role, but it could do more roles than any other Pokémon. It was the ultimate wild card, forcing opponents to guess what set it was carrying. This flexibility, this ability to be anything, is the very essence of Mew's lore. It is the original, and it can become any Pokemon's moveset, but it never becomes that Pokemon itself. And yet, despite its overwhelming move pool, Mew never dominated the way Mewtwo did. Why? Because balance comes with a cost. In competitive battles, specialization often trumps versatility. A Pokemon built with a specific purpose, like a fast special sweeper with high S-Bay and speed, can defeat a generalist that has average stats across the board. Mew's 100 in every stat means it is never exceptional. It cannot outrun the fastest threats. It cannot overpower the toughest walls. Its strength is its adaptability, but that requires careful team building. In Generation 6, when Mega Mewtwo X and Y dominated the Ubers tier, Mew found a niche in lower tiers, using its move pool to fill gaps. It remained a favourite for players who valued creativity over brute force. There is a certain philosophy in that. Mew does not force its will upon the battle. It responds, it adapts, it becomes what the situation demands. It is the quiet master. As we prepare to step away from the battlefield and into the realm of rarity, consider this. Mew's mastery is almost perfect, yet it holds back. It can learn nearly everything, but it cannot learn Volt Tackle. Its stats are balanced, but not extreme. Its DNA is the origin of all, yet it remains small, playful, invisible. There is a lesson here about the difference between having power and using it. Mew has the power of a genetic god, but it chooses to be a trickster, a ghost of possibility. That very quality, its elusiveness, its refusal to fully reveal itself, carries into its most enigmatic form, a form so rare that its existence was debated for years. A colour that was never meant to be seen. That story, the story of the Cyan Rarity, awaits in the next chapter. We just explored the mastery of moves, how Mew holds the complete genetic blueprint of every single Pokemon species, giving it access to almost every technique ever devised. It is the pinnacle of adaptability, a living technical machine, but adaptability often comes with a visual price. We look at Mew in it as a perfectly cute, pink emblem of life, a playful kitten of the DNA world. But what happens when that emblem shifts? What happens when the colour of life is replaced by the colour of a distant, ancient sea? When the pink fades to a light that has not been seen on the surface of our world for eons? This brings us to the story of the Cyan Rarity, the shiny Mew. The history of the blue shiny Mew and its extreme rarity is a saga that begins in the code of the games and ends in a perfect storm of circumstance. In the world of Pokemon, a shiny variant is a 1 in 8,192 encounter, but for mythical Pokemon, the reality is often much starker than the law of averages suggests. For decades, the vast majority of mythical Pokemon were locked behind event distributions. You could not hunt them. You received them from a nurse in a Pokemart or from a delivery man in a blue uniform, and those received Pokemon were almost always locked into their standard colour. The code simply did not allow for them to be different. Mew, however, had a different story written deep within the cartridge. The blue shiny Mew, a light cyan so pale it looks like crystallizing morning frost, became the ultimate white whale of shiny collectors. Not just because it was rare, but because for the longest time, there was simply no legitimate way to see one in the wild at all. It existed, but only in the realm of perfect data. This changed in 2005, and it changed in a way that has never been repeated. Deep within the code of Pokemon Emerald, the developers hid a tiny specific event. This became the only way to hunt it legitimately, the Faraway Island event. You might remember the rumours spreading across internet forums like wildfire, a mystical ticket called the Old Sea Map. It was given out at a single Japanese event, the Mew and the Wave Rider event at 7-Eleven stores. For a few short weeks, a narrow window of time that most of the world missed entirely. Players who obtained this item could sail from Lilycove City to an island that existed nowhere else on the physical map of Hoenn. Faraway Island was a place of impossible geometry, a single beach, a winding path through tall grass and jagged rocks, a massive solitary tree at the centre of everything, and beneath that tree, the only wild Mew encounter in the history of the main series games. The catch was brutal. The old sea map was a one-time use item. You had to use it, and it consumed itself. You could not clone the cartridge without losing the event flag. You got one chance, one single shiny check per save file. To find the Cyan rarity, players had to reset the game over and over, facing Mew thousands of times, hoping for the 1 in 8,192 odds to bless them. This was not just an event, it was a pilgrimage of patience. The time investment required was staggering, turning a simple encounter into an act of desperate devotion. But this extreme rarity created a dark shadow that fell over the early digital trading community. The controversy of hacked shiny Mews in the early trading days began almost immediately after the event concluded. The first widespread distribution of Mew in the West was via the Toys R Us events, or the long-rumoured glitch tricks of Generation 1. Those were pink. Everyone knew Mew was pink. It was the colour of its skin in the movie, the colour of its sprite on the box art. So when players saw a blue Mew in their trade window on the Game Boy Advance link cable, or later on the Nintendo Wi-Fi connection, they knew something was wrong. In the early 2000s and late 2000s, the blue shiny Mew became the perfect symbol of the illicit. It was the most common hacked Pokémon in circulation, because everyone wanted it, but almost no one actually owned a legitimate old sea map event cartridge. The irony is staggering and painful for any serious collector. The vast majority of players who saw a blue Mew assumed it was a hack, even if, by some miracle, it was actually real. The first thing a serious trader would ask was, is it the right colour? Is it the right ID? The blue Mew became a scarlet letter of the digital world. It was simply too rare to exist in the public consciousness, so it was assumed to be fake. This stigma lasted for years, tainting the hunt for those few legitimate seekers who actually managed to catch it and wanted to share their treasure. But the colour itself is deeply symbolic. It is not just a palette swap. It changes the entire psychological weight of the creature. Why is the shiny Mew blue? Why does the blue colour further emphasise its connection to rare, primordial energy? Think about Mew's origins. It is the ancestor. It is the genetic blueprint of all life. Pink is the colour of the created life. It is the colour of flesh, of the heart beating in the chest of a newborn Pokémon. It is the colour of the playful, visible creature that floats through the tree of beginning. But blue is the colour of the sky before the world was formed. The colour of the deepest ocean trench, where light has never touched. The colour of raw, untapped psychic energy. When Mew shifts to Cyan, it is no longer the cute trickster we know from the movies. It becomes something older, something that looks like it is glowing with an internal energy source that has been rustling since before time was measured. It resembles a fossil made of light. It sheds its skin of playfulness for a colour that speaks to the very energy of the universe that danced before life took its first forms. It is the Mew that exists before Mewtwo, before the Pokémon, before the rules of the world were even written down. It is a glimpse of the raw code of existence, without any of the warm filters we usually see it through. So the Cyan rarity is not just a cosmetic variation. It is a window into the deepest lore of the Pokémon world. A legitimate encounter with a shiny Mew on Faraway Island is one of the holy grails of Pokémon collecting. It is a testament to the impossible standards set by the developers and the dedication of the few who managed to prove the glitch was real. The hunt for Mew took players to a lonely island in the vast Hoenn Sea, a destination so secret it had no name on the map until you unlocked it. But Mew has made its home in many places across the world. Perhaps the most explorable of these is a series of tropical islands that hide secrets of Team Rocket and the original Kanto starters. This is a journey that begins with a ferry ride from a very familiar coast. The next chapter is called the Sevii Islands and FireRed/LeafGreen, where the hunt for Mew took a very different but equally fascinating path. A path that hides the creature not in a single tree, but within the heart of a forgotten archipelago. Let me know your thoughts on the shiny hunt. Are you a believer in the old sea map? Or do you stick with the pink original? Answer in the comments below. And if you are just now drifting off, rest easy knowing you are unlocking the secrets of an entire world, one mystery at a time. Good night. The blue shiny Mew exists in a vacuum on Faraway Island, a single encounter tied to a single moment. But the deeper story of Mew in the third generation of Pokémon games actually began 2 years earlier, with a much larger, more mysterious journey. FireRed and LeafGreen weren't just remakes of the original games. They were an opportunity to rewrite the geography of Kanto's secrets. And at the heart of that expansion lay a chain of islands shrouded in mist and memory. The original games had teased a secret: the truck by the Anne, the glitch in Cerulean City, the rumours of Mew under a truck. Game Freak, in the remakes, looked at that promise of hidden discovery and decided to build an entire world from it. They expanded the elusive nature of the 151st Pokémon, not by putting it in a cave, but by placing it at the end of a very long, very quiet road. The Sevii Islands were added as a massive post-game exploration area, separate from the familiar routes of Kanto. It was a land completely uninvolved in the main Team Rocket story, a place that felt ancient, forgotten, and profoundly mysterious. To reach Mew, you didn't just use a standard ferry. You needed an item called the Navy Ticket. This ticket was distributed at real-world events, handed out at stores like Toys R Us in the early 2000s. This was the pre-Wi-Fi era of the Game Boy Advance. You couldn't just connect to the internet and download a Wonder Card. You had to physically take your Game Boy Advance into a store, link up with a specific distribution cartridge, and receive the item directly into your bag. It was a pilgrimage, a journey that mirrored the one your character would take in the game. The difficulty of obtaining Mew in that era was not a matter of skill, but of geography and timing. It was a real-world hunt that made the digital encounter feel earned. Once you had the ticket, the sailor at the Vermilion City docks recognized the authority of the pass and opened a path to a brand new island on the Sevii map. The island's name was Birth Island, and it was a far cry from the vibrant jungles or volcanic peaks of the other Sevii islands. Birth Island was stark, small, and completely fogged over. When you stepped off the boat, the world seemed to hold its breath. The only visible path was a short staircase leading up. The fog was thick, limiting your view to only a few steps ahead. It felt like walking into a dream or a secret memory. The island itself was a giant puzzle. The floor was made of a strange stone platform, marked with triangles and squares, a pattern that looked like an ancient crop circle or a digital code. You had to navigate this stone maze in the fog. There was no music that built to a fanfare, just the sound of your footsteps on the rock. Finally, at the very center of the island, the maze opened up, the fog evaporated, and there, floating in the middle of a small clear clearing, was Mew. This was the first time for many players that Mew felt truly wild. It was not a gift handed over by a delivery man in a Pokémart. It was not a glitchy spectre born from a misaligned memory address. It was a real Pokémon on a real island in a real encounter. Mew would look at you. It would stretch. It would playfully float around, sometimes disappearing briefly in a shimmer of light, a nod to its canonical ability to turn invisible at will. The battle itself was simple. Mew was level 30, and it knew moves like ancient power and metronome, but the context made it transcendent. You had journeyed through an entire region, fought on boats, navigated a foggy puzzle island, and finally stood face to face with the original Pokémon. The capture sequence was just the final step in a long, deliberate journey of discovery. This is what made Mew so special in that era. The difficulty was not just in battling it. The difficulty was in getting the ticket. Getting the ticket meant knowing about the event, living near a participating store, convincing your parents to drive you there, waiting in line, linking your Game Boy Advance to a machine, transferring a single data packet. And if you missed it, there was no second chance. There was no Wi-Fi. There was no re-downloading the event. It was a single point in time, a single physical object that opened the door to a single fog-covered island. That scarcity amplified the mystery. When you finally caught Mew on Birth Island, you were not just filling a Pokédex slot. You had participated in a global treasure hunt. The isolation of the island, the fog that obscured the path, the ancient stone puzzle, it all conspired to create a feeling of profound isolation and wonder. It felt like you had accessed a memory of the Pokémon world that predated the modern civilization of Kanto, a place untouched by time, where the progenitor of all species played freely, unbothered by the world that had grown from its DNA. FireRed and LeafGreen took the glitch and the rumour, the elusive nature of the 151st Pokémon, and they gave it a physical reality. They canonized the secret. The Sevii Islands were not just a bonus area, they were Game Freak's apology for the mistranslations and the missed opportunities of the originals. This is where the elusive nature of Mew was perfected. The Navy boat event was not a firework display, it was a whisper in the fog, a hint at a larger world just beyond the edges of the map. The island itself, Birth Island, remains one of the most powerfully atmospheric locations in the entire series. There is no gym leader here, no storyline with Team Rocket, no villain. Just you, the fog, the stone puzzle, the mythical creature at the center, the feeling of isolation and wonder when finally encountering it in the wild is a feeling that the remakes engineered perfectly. But the story of Mew's secret origins does not end with a video game event. The code that made Mew possible was planted long before the Sevii Islands were ever drawn. The creature itself existed as an idea, a name, before the franchise itself had a title. The trademark for the name Mew was secured years before the first game ever hit store shelves. And that secret history, the paperwork of myth, is where our journey continues next. We left off in the mist of the Sevii Islands, tracing the footsteps of Mew through the remakes, the Navy boat, the distant fog, the island far away from Kanto. It all paints a picture of a creature that exists just outside the boundaries of normal perception. But if you think the mystery of Mew starts with the games or even the movies, you have to look back further, back to a time before the world knew the name Pokémon at all. There is a legal record, a document sitting in the archives of the Japan Patent Office that fundamentally reorders the history of this franchise. The name Mew, that simple soft sound, was applied for on May the 9th, 1990. This was before the name Pocket Monsters was ever officially registered as a trademark. The character of Mew, the concept of this pink, embryonic creature, was the very first piece of intellectual property that Game Freak secured. It was the seed, the first official mark of ownership. Think about the weight of that moment. Satoshi Tajiri and Ken Sugimori had been working on their dream of a bug-catching world, wrestling with legal rights to the name Capsule Monsters. They had to strip it down and rebuild. And in 1990, when they were ready to make their first formal move, they did not register the game. They did not register the region. They registered Mew, just the name. This implies that before there was a single line of code for the player character, before there was a Pokéball or a gym leader, there was the idea of this singular creature, the origin point. The trademark was officially granted on March the 31st, 1994. It was a full 2 years before Pokémon Red and Green ever hit store shelves in Japan. For those 4 years, Mew existed as a legal ghost. It was a name on paper, a protected concept waiting for a world to catch up to it. This completely recontextualizes how we view the original vision for the series. It suggests that at the very heart of the concept, long before the mechanics of catching them all were polished, before the rivalries and the Elite Four, there was the anchor of a single, elusive source, a creature that was the blueprint. The creators knew they needed a center, a quiet, gentle ghost at the core of the system. Mew was that anchor, and the name itself, Mew, it is almost too simple for the weight it carries. In Japanese, it is Mew. It is an onomatopoeia, the soft sound a cat makes. It speaks directly to the design, that cherubic feline face with the long tail. It is a sound of curiosity, a quiet inquiry, a miasma creatures make when they want to be found, or when they want to disappear. The evolution of that name from a simple sound to a global icon is the story of Pokémon itself. It has spawned Mewtwo, its clone, its shadow sibling. The name carries the weight of a generation's childhood mystery, a single syllable that means friendship, power and origin to millions of people. This is what makes the story of Shigeki Morimoto sneaking Mew into the code so deeply fascinating when you hold it next to this legal fact. The legal groundwork was already laid years before he ever touched a Game Boy cartridge. Mew existed in the patent office before it existed in the digital world. It was a ghost with a birth certificate, a creature waiting for its vessel. Morimoto was not creating Mew from nothing in those final frantic days of development. He was completing the puzzle. He was giving physical, functional life to a legal entity that had been sleeping for 6 years. The trademark was the soul. The game code was the body. This pattern of existence, the life of Mew living between two worlds, between a legal mark on an old document and a pixelated phantom in a cartridge, defines its entire legacy. It was the first piece of the foundation, chosen before the product had a name, before the world knew it was coming. It is the DNA sequence that holds the key to everything, the quiet blueprint that gave birth to a universe. It was there before the game, officially registered and waiting in the dark, and it will always be there, just out of reach, as elusive and untouchable as the true Mirage Pokémon. It is one thing to trademark an idea in 1990, to own the words and the concept on a piece of paper. It is another thing entirely to capture that idea, to dissect it, and try to force it into a cage of pure digital logic. We have traced Mew from a drawing in a developer's mind to a secret locked deep in a cartridge, but the journey of understanding what Mew truly is cannot be complete without confronting the question of what happens when human technology looks at the original Pokémon and says, "I can do better, I can do it digitally." This brings us to a television special that is often overlooked, but which functions as a direct philosophical sequel to the themes of the very first movie. I am speaking, of course, of the mastermind of Mirage Pokémon, a story that dares to ask whether the soul of a Pokémon can be saved, replicated, or overwritten. The year is roughly 2006, the 10th anniversary of the franchise. A scientist named Dr. Young, working for Team Rocket, has perfected the Mirage system. This machine is the ultimate emulator. It scans the environment. It reads the DNA and structural data of any Pokémon within range, and then it projects a perfect, tangible, battle-ready copy into the real world. It is a printer for life, and every printer needs its master file. Dr. Young sets his sights on the ultimate source code. He captures the digital data of Mew, the genetic blueprint of all Pokémon. From this data, he births a Mirage Mew. On the surface, it is flawless. It has the same move pool. It has the same stats. It can transform. It can turn invisible. It is, mathematically and technically, a perfect recreation, but you can feel the wrongness in it almost immediately. The Mirage Mew does not laugh. It does not play. It does not look at the world with the mischievous, ancient curiosity that defines the real Mew. It exists purely to serve the system that spawned it. It is a tool, a weapon, a possession. The special directly confronts the ethics of digital recreation by painting this picture of a perfect copy that is utterly hollow. There is a ghost in the machine, but the machine has forgotten to let the ghost be free. This is where Mew's role as the moral compass of the entire series becomes utterly explicit. The real Mew, sensing this violation of the natural order, arrives on the scene. It does not come to negotiate. It comes to correct an imbalance. The battle that follows between the real Mew and the Mirage Mew is not a slugfest of stats. It is a philosophical debate resolved through action. The real Mew does not see the Mirage Mew as a worthy rival. It sees it as a broken reflection, an echo without a source. The technology of the Mirage system can replicate the shape. It can replicate the moves. It can analyze the raw data of Mew down to the last atom, but it cannot replicate the spark. It cannot replicate the will. The real Mew moves with a freedom and a chaos that the Mirage Mew simply cannot emulate. The Mirage Mew hesitates. It looks for instructions. It is bound by its code. The real Mew acts purely on instinct, on heart, on the untamable wildness that is the true legacy of the original Pokémon. Mew represents the soul that technology cannot replicate. This is a recurring truth that echoes all the way back to the first movie. Mewtwo was created from Mew's DNA, given immense power and intellect, but it lacked the peace and simple joy of its progenitor. The Mirage Mew is the next step in that hubris. It tries to create not just the body, but the perfect digital vessel, and it fails for exactly the same reason. You can build the castle, but you cannot command the king. By the climax of the special, the Mirage Mew is overwhelmed. The system cannot contain the sheer authenticity of the original. Mew's data is too complex, too deeply interwoven with the concept of life itself for a cold system to truly own. Dr. Young's ambition collapses because he tried to capture a shadow when he should have been looking for the light. Mew in this story is the guardian of the intangible. It protects the idea that a Pokémon is more than the sum of its coding, more than a collection of learned moves, more than a display of raw power. It is the heart. This question of how Mew exists, between the ancient and the artificial, between the living and the digital, does not end with the destruction of a Mirage system. The world was changing. The barriers between the game and reality were beginning to blur. If the mastermind of Mirage Pokémon showed the limits of emulating Mew within a closed circuit, a new age was about to test Mew's legacy in a completely different arena. It would bring this tiny, ancient creature out of the special episodes and into the real world, into the hands of millions. The journey from the cartridge to the screen was complete. The next step was the journey from the screen into the world outside. A phenomenon was waiting, a phenomenon that would change everything. That brings us to Chapter 20, the Pokémon GO Phenomenon. After exploring the digital recreation of a Mirage Mew, where the boundaries between data and life blurred in that strange television special, the story of how this elusive creature stepped out of the screen and into a world truly began. Not within the confines of a Game Boy cartridge or a television broadcast, but onto the streets, parks, and sidewalks of every city on Earth. This was the Pokémon GO phenomenon, and at its heart was the most secretive of all mythical Pokémon, Mew. In the summer of 2016, Niantic released a mobile game that turned the real world into a Pokémon habitat. Millions of players walked their neighborhoods, chasing virtual creatures overlaid on their camera feeds. But Mew, the original Pokémon, was not simply placed in the wild like a common Pidgey. Instead, Niantic crafted an experience that honored Mew's deepest lore, its ability to become invisible at will. They called it the Mythical Discovery Quest. It was a long chain of research tasks, each step requiring patience, dedication, and a willingness to explore. The quest was not advertised. It was whispered about in online communities, much like the glitch rumors of 1996. Players who completed all 7 stages would eventually earn an encounter with Mew itself, but the journey was designed to mirror the original hunt for the hidden 151st Pokémon. Niantic translated Mew's invisibility into a gameplay mechanic in a subtle but brilliant way. Unlike other legendary Pokémon that would appear in raid battles or as wild spawns, Mew never showed itself in the overworld. It remained hidden, as it always had, in the code of the game, waiting for players to prove themselves worthy. The quest itself was invisible until you reached a certain level or completed specific milestones. Mew's presence was felt but not seen. Just like the real-world mystery that had captivated a generation, the community effort required to unlock the first ever augmented reality Mew encounter was staggering. Players had to complete hundreds of tasks collectively, sharing strategies, comparing notes, and organizing meetups to spin Pokestops and hatch eggs. The quest was global, but it felt personal. Each player's Mew was unique, spawned in a location of their choosing, often in a quiet park or a familiar street corner. When the first screenshots of a Mew encounter appeared on social media, the reaction was electric. It was as if the secret had finally been revealed, but only to those who had walked the path. Mew's role in Pokémon GO bridged the gap between nostalgic fans and new players in a way no other Pokémon could. For those who had grown up with the original games, Mew was the holy grail, the Pokémon that existed only in rumours and glitched encounters. Now here it was, floating before their eyes in augmented reality, pink and playful, exactly as they had imagined. For new players who had never touched a Game Boy, Mew was a mysterious, adorable creature with a legendary reputation. The quest taught them the history, the lore, the story of how this tiny psychic type had changed everything. The mythical discovery quest became a shared narrative, a modern-day myth made real through the camera lens of a smartphone. Players around the world walked millions of miles, caught billions of Pokémon, and completed countless research tasks, all for the chance to see Mew appear in their own living rooms. And when it did, the invisible became visible, the secret was shared, and the original Pokémon, for a brief moment, belonged to everyone. But before this journey concluded, there was one more region that would redefine Mew's legacy entirely. A connection to the tropical islands of Alola and the power of Z moves. From the augmented reality fields of Pokémon GO, where Mew became a global prize hidden in plain sight, we now travel to a tropical archipelago, a place where the legendary creature is not just a secret to be hunted, but a deity to be welcomed. This is the Alola region, and here, the lore of Mew takes on a very different shape, one that shifts from elusive myth to tangible, battle-ready power. Alola is a chain of islands steeped in tradition, where the natural world and the spiritual world are woven together like the fronds of a palm leaf. The native people hold a deep reverence for Pokémon, especially those they consider to be guardian deities. When you walk through the lush roots of Melemele or Akala, you feel the presence of something ancient in the rustling of the grass, in the crash of the waves. And in this rich cultural tapestry, Mew is not merely a genetic ancestor. It is a visiting god, a creature that appears and disappears like the morning mist, leaving behind whispers of a power beyond comprehension. This is where the story of Mew Z begins. You see, the Alola region introduced a unique mechanic, Z moves, which allow a Pokémon and its trainer to unleash a single, devastating attack by channeling the energy of a Z crystal. Each Z crystal corresponds to a specific type, or, in rare cases, to a particular Pokémon. And Mew, being the original, the blueprint of all life, received its own crystal, the Mew Z. The act of obtaining this crystal is itself a quiet revelation. It is not handed out by a professor or found in a cave guarded by puzzles. Instead, it comes from a deep, almost sacred connection. In the Alola games, if you bring Mew to a certain old woman in the town of Mali City on Ulaula Island, she will recognize the creature for what it truly is. She will tell you that Mew is an inhabitant of another world, a visitor to this one, and that the crystal she gives you is a gift, a fragment of a star that holds the memory of a time before time. And when Mew holds that crystal, something incredible happens. The Mew Z transforms, not just visually but spiritually. It becomes a conduit for an attack unlike any other in the Pokémon universe. This attack is called Genesis Supernova. Let that name sink in. Genesis Supernova. The beginning and the end, the birth of a universe, and the explosion of a dying star, all rolled into one. In the animation of the move, Mew levitates upward, surrounded by a glowing blue aura. The sky darkens, and from its tiny body, a wave of psychic energy explodes outward, creating a swirling cosmos of stars and nebulas. The battlefield itself seems to dissolve into the primordial soup of creation, and then everything returns to silence. The visual storytelling here is profound. Mew is not just attacking, it is momentarily rewriting the fabric of reality, returning the world to its original state, as if the battle itself is an illusion that the creature can dispel with a thought. This is the mechanical shift we need to understand. For years, Mew was the hidden secret, the impossible-to-get glitch Pokémon, the prize for special events. It was a collector's item, a badge of honor in your Pokédex. But in Alola, Mew becomes a genuine battle asset, and not just any asset, a legendary one with a signature move that rivals the most powerful attacks in the game. The Mew Z elevates Mew from a mythical novelty to a tactical apex, capable of turning the tide of any battle in a single turn. The Genesis Supernova deals massive damage, but more importantly, it resets the field effects, removing hazards, clearing weather, and eliminating any stat changes. It is a reset button, a return to neutrality. In a way, it mirrors Mew's role in the lore. The original state, the pure template, the beginning of all things. But the Alola connection runs deeper than just a move. The way the region treats Mew as a visiting deity echoes the real-world mythology of the Hawaiian Islands, which Alola is based on. In Hawaiian tradition, certain beings known as Aqua roam the land, sometimes visible, sometimes not. They are not worshipped daily, but they are honoured when they appear. Similarly, Mew in Alola is not a god that demands temples or sacrifice. It is a presence that floats through the rainforest, that rests on the slopes of the dormant volcano, that watches from the shadows of the library in Mali City. The old woman who gives you the crystal does not ask for anything in return. She simply says that Mew has chosen you, that it trusts you enough to share its true power. And in that moment, the boundary between trainer and deity blurs. There is also a subtle melancholy here. The Genesis Supernova resets the battlefield, but it cannot undo the passage of time. Mew returns the world to its original state, but only for a moment. The move is a reminder that the original state is always there, beneath the layers of battle scars and memory. Mew carries that original state within its DNA, and now it can project it outward, if only for a single turn. So Mew evolving not just in the games, but in our understanding, from a hidden glitch to a global hunt in Pokémon GO, from a genetic ancestor to a visiting deity in Alola, and now to a battle-ready force with a star in its hand. Each generation adds a new layer, a new way for this tiny pink creature to remind us why it is the original Pokémon. And as we leave the sun-drenched islands of Alola, we carry with us the image of Mew floating in a field of stars, a supernova blooming from its core, and the world resetting to its pure, untouched beginning. But there is another story waiting in the shadows, one that connects Mew to its greatest creation, its darkest mirror, its other half. That story is the mystery of the Mew Duo, and the bond between the original and the clone is far more complex than any battle could ever resolve. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. In the previous chapter, we witnessed Mew in Alola, wielding the power of the Genesis Supernova. It was a display of creation, of renewal, of a star's beginning. But a beginning is meaningless without something to contrast it against. And in the Pokémon universe, Mew's story has always been defined by its counterpoint, its shadow, its clone. This is the mystery of the Mew Duo. To understand Mew is to understand a creature of profound isolation. There is only one true Mew, and yet its legacy is not a solitary one. Humanity wrote a second chapter to its story. They took the genetic code of this gentle progenitor and forced it to evolve into something else. That something else is Mewtwo, and the relationship between the two has become the central enigma of the franchise's deepest lore. Defining the relationship between Mew and Mewtwo in modern lore requires looking beyond the simple labels of original and copy. Modern media, from the films to the games and manga, has deepened this connection into something far more complex. Mewtwo is not merely a villain spawned from Mew's DNA. He is a brother, a son, a mirror. In the world of the Pokémon Journey series, Mewtwo returns to find its own path, a journey that is entirely separate from Mew, yet Mew's presence still hangs over it like a ghost. Mewtwo's entire identity crisis revolves around Mew. It is the yardstick by which it measures its own worth. And Mew, in its elusive silence, becomes a parent who never asked for a child, yet watches from the shadows. This brings us to the heart of the matter, the core duality that makes this pair so compelling. The relationship between Mew and Mewtwo represents the ultimate debate: nature versus nurture. Mew is nature. Its power is instinctive, playful, elusive. It does not seek conflict. It hides. It observes. It is the innate, the untaught, the wild. Mewtwo is nurture. Its power is the result of intense tampering, of selective breeding on a genetic level, of a desire to create a perfect weapon. It is a creature burdened by the circumstances of its own birth, a product of its environment and the cruelty of its creators. The first movie framed this conflict not as a simple battle of strength, but a battle of identity. Mewtwo looks at Mew and sees a relic, something that was not forged in fire and ambition. And yet Mewtwo so desperately wants what Mew has: the peace, the acceptance, the effortless belonging. The duality is not good versus evil. It is innate versus manufactured. It asks a question that has haunted the franchise for decades. Does your origin dictate your worth? Or does the sum of your choices define who you truly are? Mewtwo, through its long journey of destruction, isolations, and eventual redemption, constantly struggles against the shadow of its progenitor. It wants to be its own being, but it can never escape the fact that its DNA is a copy. A perfect copy perhaps, but a copy nonetheless. And Mew, the original, represents the peace that Mewtwo feels it can never truly have. There is a visual language to this duo that is impossible to ignore. The recurring motif of the pink and purple duo in merchandise and media is a subtle but constant reminder of their bond. When you see the colour pink in a Pokémon, your mind instantly thinks of Mew. It is the softest pink, a colour of infancy, of innocence, of the unformed. It is the colour of the first blush of dawn. Mewtwo is purple. It is a deep royal synthetic purple, the colour of a twilight that has been polluted by artificial light. It is the colour of psychic power made manifest through rage and science. They are colour opposites on the emotional spectrum. The warmth of the progenitor versus the coldness of the clone. In merchandise, they are constantly sold as a set. The tag team cards from the Sun and Moon era, the various collection boxes, the statues. The industry knows that to have one is to be reminded of the other. You do not truly own a Mew unless you see the Mewtwo that stems from it. And this leads us to why they remain the most recognizable pair in the entire Pokédex. Think of any other pairing: Reshiram and Zekrom, Groudon and Kyogre, Solgaleo and Lunala. They are powerful, but their stories are often cosmic or territorial. They are gods fighting over domains. The story of Mew and Mewtwo is intimate. It is a story about a parent and a child, or a god and its creation, or a scientist and their greatest mistake. Every fan of Pokémon knows this story. It is not a hidden lore of ancient times. It is the foundational myth of the modern Pokémon world. Mewtwo represents humanity reaching too far, trying to perfect nature. Mew represents the world that was there before. The irreplaceable origin. They are the original duality. That is why no other duo carries the same emotional weight. They are the yang and yin of the entire Pokémon concept. One is the origin, the other is the consequence. They are linked by DNA, by history, and by destiny. And perhaps the most subtle, powerful clue to this entire relationship is found in the design of Mew itself. It is small, it is round, it floats. Its tail curls into a perfect spiral, a helix, a symbol of genetic potential floating in the void. Mew looks, in the most profound sense, like an embryo. It is the potential for all life. Mewtwo looks like a fully developed adult, standing tall, powerful, its tail thick and muscular. Mewtwo is the embryo grown to maturity. But the question the lore has always asked is this: did maturity corrupt the design, or was the original design, the embryo, the only version that was truly pure? This inevitably leads us to the deeper symbolism at play, the symbolism of the embryo, of the curled form, of the genesis of life itself. This is the mystery we will explore next, as we look closer at the very shape of the original Pokémon, and what it truly means to be the blueprint for an entire world. In Chapter 23, the Embryonic Symbolism, we will delve into the details of Mew's body and its connection to the origins of all life. For now, rest in the knowledge of the duo, the pair the perfect reflection of nature and nurture. The pink and the purple, Mew and Mewtwo. Their story is not over. It is simply waiting for the next generation to discover it. The previous chapter left us with a duality, nature versus nurture, incarnated in two beings who share the same genetic origin. Mew and Mewtwo, the original and the clone, the innocent and the engineered. But if Mewtwo represents the forced evolution of a created mind, then Mew itself embodies something far more subtle, something that has been staring at us from the very first pixelated sprite we ever saw, something embryonic. Let's talk about the design. When you look at Mew, truly look at it, you are not seeing a finished creature, you are seeing potential. The visual language of the 1990s was defined by a certain simplicity, but within that simplicity, the artists at Game Freak embedded layers of unconscious meaning. Mew is pink, a colour often associated with infancy, with softness, with the warmth of new life. Its body is a smooth oval, almost featureless except for those large innocent eyes and a long expressive tail. But the most striking element is how it curls. Mew's default posture, the one in the official artwork and in the game sprites, is curled into a tight ball with its tail wrapped around its body. It is the same posture a fetus takes in the womb, the same posture a sleeping animal takes to conserve heat and vulnerability. This is not accidental. In that curled shape, Mew is not just resting, it is holding everything inside. It is a closed system, a sphere of endless genetic information waiting to unfold. The artists of the 1990s, working with limited graphical memory, chose to make Mew the smallest, roundest creature in the roster. Compare it to the angular, armoured forms of the other legendaries. Mew is soft, it is unfinished on purpose, and that brings us to the concept of the unborn. Mew represents the future of all Pokémon species, not because it is powerful, but because it is the blueprint. Its DNA contains every move, every type, every potential combination that any Pokémon could ever learn. In a very real sense, Mew is the genetic egg from which everything hatched. The curled posture is a visual metaphor for that egg, a closed sphere of infinite possibility. When Mew in the games, it is often floating, suspended in a soft glow, as if it is drifting through a prenatal fluid. It is weightless, untouched by the gravity of the world, because it has not yet committed to a single form. Now think about transparency and light. In the official depictions, from the original Sugimori watercolour to the pixel art of Pokémon Red and Green, Mew is often rendered with a translucent quality. Its body is not solid. It seems to glow from within, as if light passes through it. That transparency is a visual callback to the idea of the invisible, the unseen potential that exists before anything is born. Mew can become invisible at will, but even when visible, it never appears fully opaque. There is always a sense that you are looking at something that is not quite there, something that is still being formed. The use of light in Mew's artistic depictions reinforces this. In the first movie, Mew appears in a cascade of shimmering particles, as if it is made of starlight. In the official game artwork for FireRed and LeafGreen, Mew is shown floating in a beam of pure white light, its pink body almost blending into the background. The light is not behind it, it is emanating from it. That light is the potential. It is the same light that animates life itself, the spark of creation that Arceus might have used to shape the world, but that Mew carries in its very cells. This design philosophy was revolutionary for the time. In the 1990s, most video game characters were built around clear, strong silhouettes. Mario had his cap, Sonic had his spikes. Pokémon themselves had distinct shapes that made them instantly recognizable, but Mew broke that rule. It was deliberately ambiguous. You could squint and see a cat. You could squint and see a human embryo. You could squint and see a pink balloon. The designers leaned into that ambiguity because the mystery was the point. Mew's curled posture is also a defense mechanism, both in lore and in design. When you are a tiny, fragile creature in a world of giants, you curl inward, you make yourself small, you protect the vulnerable center. And that center, in Mew's case, is the genetic library of all existence. Every time Mew curls into that ball, it is hiding the secrets of the universe. Every time it unfolds and stretches its tail, it reveals just a glimpse of possibility. This embryonic symbolism runs deeper when we consider Mew's role as the genetic ancestor. An embryo is not an adult. It does not have fully developed features. It is pure potential, a blank slate that will become something specific only when it receives the right signals. Mew does not evolve. It cannot evolve into something else. And that is precisely why it is the ancestor, because it remains in that primal state, forever undifferentiated, forever ready to become anything. Evolution in the Pokémon world is about specialization, about becoming more complex, about losing the ability to be other things. Mew stays simple, so it can be everything. The artists of the 1990s understood this intuitively. They gave Mew a design that looked like it had been drawn before any other Pokémon existed. A simple circle, 2 dots for eyes, a small mouth and a tail. It is the most basic shape a character can take, and yet because it is so basic, it is timeless. It does not belong to any one era. It belongs to the beginning. Now, the use of transparency also serves a narrative purpose. Mew is elusive. It hides in high grass and caves, in the digital code of the game itself. Its transparency makes it hard to see, hard to track, but light still passes through it, meaning it is still connected to the world, even when it is hiding. That is the paradox of Mew. It is both here and not here, both the source and the secret. When you finally encounter it in the games, it usually appears with a soft, chiming sound, a visual burst of sparkles, as if it is allowing itself to be seen for just a moment before it vanishes again. And that brings us to the place where it hides. The most famous sanctuary of Mew in the original games is the Cerulean Cave. In Generation 1, the cave is a labyrinth of dark water and long corridors, populated by powerful Pokémon like Golbat and Chansey. And deep within, at the very bottom, Mew waits. But it never appeared in that cave during normal gameplay. Only through glitches or special events did players ever see it there. That hidden cavern became a symbol of the unattainable, the mystery that kept the games alive long after the cartridge was inserted. And the Cerulean Cave holds more secrets than just Mew. It is a place where the boundaries of normal encounter mechanics break down, where the code itself is as fragile as the egg from which Mew was drawn. The shadows in that cave stretch longer than they should, and the water reflects nothing. That is the next layer we need to uncover. The story of how a hidden room in the underworld became the ultimate test of faith for trainers who believed there was always one more secret. The Cerulean Cave mystery will take us into the very heart of the original game's architecture, where the line between glitch and myth blurs into something permanent. That curled form of Mew, the embryonic blue of its body folded into a perfect circle, is a statement of infinite potential. It is the seed containing the DNA of every creature that walks, swims, or flies across the Pokémon world. But a seed, to be meaningful, must have a place to be hidden, a garden, a tomb. In the original vision for the franchise, that vault was the cave. The Cerulean Cave was never just another dungeon. It was the final test of the Kanto journey, a dark labyrinth located in the waters just north of Cerulean City. In the design of the original games, it serves no mandatory purpose. The Pokémon League has been conquered. The Professor has offered his congratulations. The game, as far as the narrative is concerned, is over, but the cave remains, a closed mouth in the rocks, waiting for anyone curious enough to pry it open. The reason Mew was originally intended to be found here, and not on a sunny route or a flowery meadow, is because the cave represents the unconscious mind of the Pokémon world. It is the place where things are buried. Mew is the ancestor, the original source code. It had to be hidden in a place that felt like a secret. The deepest dungeon in the land was the only appropriate vessel for the deepest secret in the lore. It was a place you had to want to find. A place that tested your understanding of the game world beyond the surface level. In the original games, the only way a player would even know the cave existed was to be told. or to stumble upon it completely by accident. There is no sign. There is no map marker directing you to the truth. The cave waits. This is the perfect reliquary for a mythological creature. But look closely at the environment of the cave itself. What is the story it tells? The Cerulean cave is filled with creatures that should not exist in the wild in such concentration. Wild Ditto, the transformed Pokémon, are common here. Chansey, harbouring incredibly rare lucky eggs, appear around every corner. The very bedrock of the cave seems to pulse. This is the environmental storytelling of Mew's chaotic energy. Mew's DNA is not just in the cave, it is the cave. The chaotic energy of a creature whose genetic sequence contains every possible outcome bleeds into the walls. It affects the local wildlife. It creates monsters of great power and strange ability. The cave is a space where the normal rules of Pokémon biology break down under the weight of Mew's ambient presence. The wild Pokémon here are not just strong, they are anomalies, living in the wake of an origin point. And then, there is the sentinel of this chaos. Deep in the basement of the cave, on the lowest floor, where the water runs cold and dark, the player finds Mewtwo, the clone, the creature created from Mew's DNA. Its presence in the cave was never an accident. It was always meant to be the clue. Mewtwo is the herald. The player walks through the chaos, defeats the ultimate weapon, the perfected clone, and stands in the silence of its defeat. And if the player is clever, if they are paying attention to the story the cave is whispering, they might ask the question: if the clone is here, the masterpiece of genetic engineering, where is the original canvas? Mewtwo's existence in the cave is a loud echo. It is the proof that the original is nearby. The cave is not Mewtwo's home. It is the scene of the genesis. Mewtwo is the evidence left behind. Mew is the ghost that haunts the laboratory. When you defeat Mewtwo, the game offers you a chance to catch it. It is the final boss of the Kanto region. But for the original programmers, the dungeon's deepest secret was not Mewtwo. It was the creature that Mewtwo was made from. Mewtwo is a roadblock, a test of strength. Mew is the truth that lies beyond the test of strength. The layout of the cave suggests this perfectly. You fight your way through the wild chaos. You defeat the engineered super soldier. And if you can bend the rules of the game, you find the source. Mewtwo points to Mew. The created always points to the creator, even without the glitch, without the official distribution events. The remnants of Mew's presence were scattered across the dark corners of Kanto. The rumours of the truck near the Anne, the glitch Pokémon that filled the screen with fractured data. The Missingno glitch itself, born from a specific sequence of events involving the old man and the roots surrounding Cerulean, was a remnant of Mew's coding. Mew's data structure was so unique, so foreign to the normal order of the game, that it created cracks in the fabric of reality. Every time a player encountered a glitch or heard a rumour, they were touching the shadow of Mew. The cave was the heart of the mystery, but the veins ran through every corner of the Kanto region. The game was haunted by a Pokémon that officially did not exist, and that haunting was the entire point. The cave is a monument to chaos, a dark corner of Kanto where the genetic blueprint of reality was left to mutate in the shadows. But the story of Mew does not end in the darkness of a cave floor. To understand the ultimate purpose of Mew's DNA, we must instead look up, towards a structure that links the very fabric of the Pokémon world together, a tree that is more than a tree. That story takes us away from Kanto entirely, to the roots of life itself. This is where our journey leads us next, into the mystery of the Mew and the World Tree. The Cerulean Cave was always meant to be Mew's resting place. When the developers hid that final dungeon beneath the Indigo Plateau surface, they weren't just hiding a rare encounter. They were encoding a truth about the very nature of this Pokémon. The chaotic energy that permeates those stone walls, that sense of something dormant yet alive, wasn't a glitch. It was a whisper of a deeper connection, a thread that ties Mew not to a single island or cave, but to the entire planet itself. And that thread leads us to a place far more ancient than any man-made labyrinth, the Tree of Beginning. There is a metaphysical bond between Mew and the life force of the Earth, a bond that transcends biology and enters the realm of planetary consciousness. You see, Mew is not merely a creature that exists within the world. It is a living extension of the world's own vitality. In the same way that your heartbeat echoes the rhythm of your blood, Mew's presence resonates with the pulse of every living thing. This is not a metaphor. In the Pokémon universe, the life force of the planet, sometimes called the aura or the source, flows through Mew like water through a riverbed. Mew is not the source of that flow, but it is the keeper of its memory. How does a planet remember? How does a world store the genetic history of every species that has ever crawled, swam, or soared across its surface? The answer lies in the Tree of Beginning, a colossal, bioluminescent organism that rises from the earth like a cathedral of living data. This tree is not a tree in the botanical sense. It is a biological hard drive, a repository of genetic code so vast that it contains the blueprint for every Pokémon that has ever existed, and Mew is its guardian. Think of the Tree of Beginning as the central server of the Pokémon world, and Mew as the administrator who holds the keys. Its DNA, you recall, contains the sequence of every Pokémon species. That is no accident. That is the system architecture of life itself. The Tree of Beginning appears in the 8th Pokémon movie, Lucario and the Mystery of Mew. In that film, the tree is depicted as a living entity that controls the flow of aura, the energy that connects all living beings. It pulses with a soft blue light, and its roots spiral deep into the earth, linking it to every corner of the planet. When the tree falls ill, the entire world suffers. And who is there to tend to it? Not because Mew is the most powerful, but because Mew is the most aware. It feels the tree's pain as its own. It understands that the tree is not a separate structure, but an extension of itself. This is where Mew's role as the guardian of the world's genetic history. In the movie, when the Tree of Beginning begins to shut down, it absorbs Pikachu and steals the aura of other Pokémon, treating them as data to be archived. Mew intervenes not as a warrior, but as a mediator. It tries to communicate with the tree, to calm it, to remind it that life is not meant to be stored. It is meant to be lived. The tree, in its ancient and almost robotic logic, sees no distinction between preservation and suffocation, but Mew does. Mew represents the balance between holding on and letting go, and that leads us to the most poignant moment in Mew's cinematic history, the sacrifice. In Pokémon, the first movie, Mew confronts Mewtwo on New Island. The clone, born from Mew's own genetic material, rejects the idea of a natural order. It wants to create a world of perfect, artificial Pokémon. Mew, however, does not fight back with force. Instead, it uses its connection to the world's life force to restore the clones that Mewtwo has created. When the storm rages and the battle threatens to destroy everything, Mew places itself in harm's way. It literally shields the young clones from a devastating explosion. In that act, Mew sacrifices its own physical form to maintain the balance of nature. The world weeps, and the rain washes away the conflict. Mew, the original, gives itself so that the new can survive. This sacrifice is not just a plot point, it is a demonstration of what it means to be a guardian of genetic history. Mew understands that the tree, the world, must continue. Its own existence is secondary to the health of the planet, and yet Mew does not die permanently. It returns, because the life force of the Earth cannot be extinguished. Mew is the avatar of that force, and as long as the planet lives, Mew will find a way to re-emerge. This is why, in later games, Mew appears in events like the one on the Navy boat in the Sevii Islands. It is not a new Mew, it is the same being, regenerated from the Tree of Beginning's memory. Now, consider what this means for the language of Mew. If Mew is the keeper of all genetic history, if it can communicate with the Tree of Beginning through aura, then its method of speech is unlike any other. We have never heard Mew speak in human words, only a series of high-pitched chirps and coos, but those sounds carry meaning. They are a language, a code that predates the written word. In the next chapter, we will explore the possibility that Mew's vocalizations are not random sounds, but a form of biological encryption. A tongue that speaks directly to the essence of life itself. The language of Mew may be the original voice of the planet, and we have only just begun to listen. For now, rest with this image. A small pink creature curled at the roots of a luminescent tree, its tail twitching as the world breathes around it, is not asleep. It is remembering. Every leaf, every stone, every heartbeat that ever was, stored in the branches above and the soil below. And Mew, the original Pokémon, is the dreamer of that dream. Sleep well. If the tree of beginning is the biological hard drive of the planet, then Mew is the sound that hard drive makes when it is running, a quiet, constant hum of pure life force. But that hum is not just a vibration. It has a specific shape, a specific pitch, a specific texture. And if you listen closely to the voice of Mew, across every piece of media it has ever touched, you will notice that it does not speak the way we do. It does not bargain, it does not explain, and it almost never uses the most obvious tool available to a psychic-type creature. It does not use telepathy. This is a deliberate choice, a narrative signal buried in sound design that tells us everything about who Mew truly is. Consider the high-pitched cry that defines Mew across every generation. In the original Game Boy titles, it is a swift, ascending chirp, a burst of digital static that resolves into a clear tone. It sounds like a question. In the anime, that cry softens into an expressive cooing sound, a rolling vowel that rises and falls with the character's mood. In the first movie, when Mew faces Mewtwo, the cry is not aggressive, it is inquisitive, almost vulnerable. A high-pitched call is biologically coded in us as the sound of something young, something that needs protection. It is the opposite of a roar. It is the sound of innocence. By anchoring Mew to this frequency, the creators signal that we are dealing with a being that exists in a state of permanent beginning, a creature that never had to grow up and learn the armor of complex language. The absence of telepathy in Mew is what makes it so distinct among the great psychic legends of the franchise. Mewtwo speaks to you directly in your mind. Lugia projects its thoughts across the ocean. Latios and Latios can whisper their secrets into the ears of a single human companion. Telepathy is a translation. It takes pure thought and filters it into a form a human brain can understand. It is a bridge. Mew does not build that bridge. It does not need to. Mew communicates through raw emotional broadcast. It is not interested in conveying information. It is interested in conveying. Its cry is not a word. It is the sound of joy, the sound of curiosity, the sound of distress. There is no filter. You do not translate Mew. You feel Mew. This is the communication style of a creature that has never been corrupted by doubt, a being that operates entirely on instinct and pure heart. It is the same reason a baby cries or laughs without composing a sentence first. It is pure unmediated existence. This non-verbal storytelling is the most powerful tool the franchise has for establishing Mew's innocence. In the climactic battle of the first movie, Mewtwo gives a speech, a long, articulate, devastating speech about the flaws of humanity and the cruelty of being created as a weapon. Mew does not respond with a speech. It responds with a sound. It lets out a cry of concern, flies down to the clones, and physically shields them. It does not argue with Mewtwo's logic. It simply acts on the emotion of compassion. There is no room for misinterpretation. When a creature does not use language, you cannot doubt its motives. There is no subtext, no hidden agenda, no clever wording. There is only the direct expression of the soul. Mew's innocence is not a character trait that is described to you. It is a frequency that is broadcast directly into your chest every time it opens its mouth. And this voice reflects its ultimate status as a creature of pure emotion. Mew is not the god of the universe. Arceus holds that title. Mew is something different. Mew is the of the universe. It is the raw potential of life before it learns to build walls. Its voice is the sound of the world. Before language complicated everything, it is the sound of the first cell dividing. It is the sound of the tree of beginning, processing the genetic history of every species that has ever lived. There is no urgency to translate that into human speech. It would be a reduction. To ask Mew to speak in sentences would be like asking the ocean to describe itself in a paragraph. The ocean just roars. The wind just howls. Mew just cries out. This is why, when you listen to the variations of the Mew cry across the decades, you are not hearing a simple game sound effect. You are hearing an intentional piece of character design. The high pitch keeps it small. The expressive tone keeps it present. The refusal to engage in telepathy keeps it pure. Mew could speak to you. It has the brain power. It simply understands that it doesn't need to. The truth is not in the words. The truth is in the feeling. If capturing Mew is like trying to capture a feeling, then how do you distribute that feeling to millions of people across the world? How do you give a single player the chance to hold the voice of the world in their hands? The answer is that you do not do it casually. You do not do it often. You build an entire history of scarcity and ceremony around the act of handing over the original one. The logistics of that distribution, the strange and fascinating history of how Mew was actually given to the public, is a story that speaks directly to its rarity and its value. It is a story that begins with a secret glitch and ends with a global event, and it is the subject of our next chapter, the rarity of official distributions. The high-pitched cry of Mew, that simple, almost childlike sound, is a curious thing. For a creature so elusive, so deeply tied to the origins of life itself, its voice is surprisingly innocent. It rarely uses telepathy, choosing instead to communicate in a way that feels raw and instinctual. And perhaps that instinctual nature is exactly why Mew's scarcity in the hands of players became such a legend. Because if you could never catch it, never trade for it legitimately, then the only way to possess one was to be chosen. And being chosen meant traveling to a specific place, at a specific time, and standing in line for a moment that would define the value of a Pokémon for decades. Let's go back to the very first distribution. In the summer of 1996, just months after the Japanese release of Pokémon Red and Green, Nintendo of Japan launched a series of promotional events. The most famous of these was the Mew distribution held at the Pokémon Expo in Tokyo. But it wasn't just one event, it was a tour. They called it the Mew World Tour, though the world at that point was mostly Japan. The tour made stops in major cities, Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, Fukuoka, Sapporo. At each location, a select number of trainers were invited to bring their Game Boy cartridges to a special booth. There, a Nintendo representative would plug in a device and transfer Mew directly into their save file. The process was almost ritualistic. You had to present your cartridge, wait in line for hours, and then watch as the data was written directly onto the ROM. No mystery gift, no wireless connection, just a physical handshake between a player and a developer. The Mew itself was level 5, holding a Lumberry with the move Pound. It was unassuming, but it was proof you had been there. These early distributions were incredibly limited. Only a few thousand Mews were ever handed out during that first tour, and because the event required physical presence, the Pokémon became a badge of geography. If you lived in a rural area, you simply missed out. That scarcity created an underground economy that would define the trading card game and the video games for years to come. A Mew from the 1996 tour could be traded for nearly anything. It held value not because of its stats, but because of the story behind it. Over the next few years, Nintendo experimented with different distribution methods. In 1998, for the release of Pokémon, the first movie, a special Mew was given away at theaters in Japan and later in the United States. The movie tie-in distribution was massive compared to the early tour. Millions of players received a Mew that way, but the catch was you had to be in the theater and you had to buy a ticket. This was the first time a Mew distribution felt like a cultural event. Parents brought their children to the movies, not just for the film, but for the Pokémon that came with it. But the golden age of Mew scarcity truly peaked with the Nintendo Power distribution in 2000. In the United States, Nintendo Power Magazine ran a promotion where subscribers could send away for a Mew by mail. They provided a special cartridge, a gold cartridge, that contained a Mew. You had to write a letter, include proof of purchase, and wait weeks for delivery. That Mew became one of the most valuable in existence. Even today, a legitimate Nintendo Power Mew, untouched and uncloned, can fetch hundreds of dollars in online auctions. Then came the Generation 3 remakes, FireRed and LeafGreen, in 2004. This was the first time Mew could be obtained through a legitimate in-game event, but again, it required a physical location. The Navy Boat event, called the Aurora Ticket event in other regions, was distributed at select Pokémon centers in Japan and later at events in the US. You had to bring your Game Boy Advance to a store, usually a Toys R Us or a Pokémon center, and download the ticket wirelessly. The ticket unlocked a short boat ride to a remote island where Mew appeared at level 30. It was a beautiful, dreamlike sequence. The island was silent, overcast, and Mew would be standing alone on a cliff. But to get there, you still had to travel. The scarcity of Mew across these events maintained its value for over 2 decades, because every Mew came with a memory. You remembered the mall where you stood in line. You remembered the theatre where the lights dimmed and the movie started. You remembered the magazine subscription that arrived with a mysterious package. Each Mew was a fossil of a moment in time, frozen in the cartridge code, but slowly the hunt changed. With the introduction of the Nintendo Wi-Fi connection in 2006, Mystery Gift became a standard feature. Suddenly, distributions could happen online. You didn't need to leave your house. In 2016, for Pokémon's 20th anniversary, a Mew was distributed via a simple code, MEB20. You typed it into your game, and Mew appeared in your party. No lines, no geography, no memory. That convenience, while wonderful for collectors, also meant the end of an era. The loss of the hunt was palpable. The mystique that once surrounded Mew, the rumour of a 151st Pokémon, the thrill of the glitch, the pilgrimage to a distribution event, all of that faded into a digital transaction. Today, Mew is still rare in the sense that not every player has one, but it no longer carries the weight of travel. And yet there is one aspect of Mew that remains untouched by any distribution, any code, any event. One part of its existence that no amount of digital delivery can replicate. Because Mew's true power is not in how you obtain it, but in what it can do once it's yours. That power lies in a Movepool so vast, so impossibly deep, that it makes every other Pokémon look like a one-trick creature. That is the subject of our next chapter, the ultimate Movepool. But for now, let the memory of those long lines and those rare Mews settle in your mind. The hunt may be over, but the rarity, the real rarity, was always about the journey itself. Those distributions were remarkable, each one a rare chance to touch something mythical. But the real magic of Mew has never been about travelling to a specific city or standing in line at a convention. The real magic is written into its very biology, into the sequence of its DNA, because Mew doesn't just carry the genetic blueprint of every Pokémon that ever lived. It carries the potential to become any of them, and that potential is unlocked by a single extraordinary move, Transform, the move that defines not just Ditto, but in a deeper, more mysterious way, defines Mew as well. Let's break down the technical mechanics of how Mew can learn Transform. Because it's not as simple as the game's menu might suggest. Mew is the only Pokémon besides Ditto that can naturally learn Transform, and it does so by leveling up. At level 10, in the modern games, it gains the ability to rearrange its cellular structure into a perfect copy of any opponent. But think about what that means. Mew's DNA is already the master template. It contains everything. So when Mew uses Transform, it isn't learning something new. It's activating a dormant instruction set that was always there, a hidden file in its biological hard drive. It's not copying, it's remembering. This is where the relationship between Mew and Ditto becomes so fascinating, and it's a thread that leads directly to one of the most enduring fan theories in Pokémon lore, the failed clone theory. The idea that Ditto is not a naturally occurring Pokémon, but a failed attempt to clone Mew. Look at the evidence. Ditto is a purple amorphous blob. Its only move is Transform. It can change into any Pokémon, but its stats remain the same, and its face is always a blank, slightly goofy smile. Compare that to Mew's perfect, tiny, cat-like form. Ditto looks like a prototype that never crystallized into a stable shape. It looks like a half-finished sketch. And here's the strangest part. In the wild, Ditto can be found in the very same locations that Mew was originally hidden. In the original games, Ditto appears in the Pokémon Mansion on Cinnabar Island, the very lab where Mewtwo was created, and it also appears in the Cerulean Cave, the only place you could encounter Mew through a glitch. Coincidence? It's far more likely that Ditto is the ghost of a failed cloning attempt, a cellular echo of Mew that escaped the lab and spread across the world, forever stuck in a state of imitation. But Mew's mastery of moves goes far beyond Transform. The ultimate Movepool is a phrase that barely scratches the surface. Mew can learn nearly every technical machine, every hidden machine, every move tutor technique in existence. There are only a handful of exceptions, like Volt Tackle, which requires a specific egg lineage, but everything else is fair game. That means Mew can learn Hyper Beam, it can learn Psychic, it can learn Fire Blast, it can learn Thunder, it can learn Ice Beam, it can learn Earthquake, it can learn moves that no other single Pokémon can learn together. And it can do this because its DNA is not rigid, it's fluid. It's a template that can be overlaid with any pattern. Now, how does Mew use this vast library of moves in the wild? It doesn't fight. At least, not the way a trainer would. Mew uses its moves to mimic the environment and stay hidden. Imagine a small pink creature floating through the Amazon rainforest. It hears a jaguar approaching. It doesn't need to flee. It can simply use Transform to become a leaf, or a rock, or a patch of moss. It can use Substitute to leave a decoy. It can use Double Team to create after images that confuse predators. It can even use Flash to blind an attacker, and then use Teleport to vanish completely. Mew is not a warrior, it's a ghost, a master of camouflage and misdirection. In the Pokémon world, where survival often depends on battle, Mew chose a different path. It chose to be invisible. But what happens when a trainer captures Mew and brings it into competitive battle? That's where the monster awakens. The competitive versatility of a Pokémon that can be anything is almost unfair. In official tournaments, Mew has been used as a support Pokémon, a sweeper, a wall, a stall breaker. It can run a moveset that counters the entire metagame. With the combination of Transform, Swords Dance, and a coverage move like Aura Sphere or Dark Pulse, Mew can dismantle teams. But the real terror is that it can also run a completely support-based set, using moves like Stealth Rock, Will-O-Wisp, and Recover. And because its base stats are evenly distributed, with every stat at 100, it has no glaring weaknesses. It's a blank slate, and a blank slate can become anything the moment the battle starts. There's a reason Mew is often banned from certain competitive formats. It's not because it's the strongest, it's because it's the most unpredictable. When you face a Mew, you don't know if it's going to become your own Pokémon reflected back at you, or if it's going to rain fire from the sky. You have to respect the possibility, and that respect is the echo of its ancient power. Now, as we move toward the final chapter of this journey through Mew's legacy, we have to ask ourselves one last question. What does it mean to be the 151st Pokémon, the last entry in an era, the creature that was never meant to be found, yet became the most sought after? That mystery, that quiet finality, is something we'll sit with in just a moment. But first, in the space between what Mew is and what it can become, the idea that Ditto might be a failed clone of Mew is a theory that lingers like a ghost in the code of Generation 1. And it resonates because it points to something fundamental about Mew's nature. That failed clone, with its ability to transform into any Pokémon but never quite hold a stable shape, mirrors the very essence of what Mew represents, a genetic template so powerful that even its mistakes become legends. But that template didn't just spawn a single imperfect copy. It gave rise to an entire archetype, a category of Pokémon that would define the franchise's mythology for decades. Think about what happened after the original 151. When the second generation arrived, the developers had a problem. They had created a world where the rarest creatures were not only powerful but also deeply hidden. Mewtwo was a bioengineered weapon. Mew was a secret whisper in the code. How do you follow that? The answer came in the form of Celebi, a tiny forest-dwelling psychic grass type with the power to travel through time. Celebi was small, pinkish green and elusive. It was distributed exclusively at events. Sound familiar? That was the Mew blueprint. The first mythical, the template that every generation would copy. Celebi inherited the mystery, Jirachi inherited the whimsy, Deoxys inherited the genetic strangeness, and on through Manaphy, Shaman, Victini, and all the rest. Every single one of them, from Generation 2 to Generation 9, carries the DNA of Mew's original design. A single, non-breedable creature, obtainable only through limited-time distributions or special encounters, always tied to a story of ancient power or cosmic significance. But there's a reason why none of them ever captured the same cultural mystique. It's not just that Mew was first, it's that Mew's discovery was an accident, a glitch that became a legend. Celebi was planned, Jirachi was programmed, but Mew existed in the code without official acknowledgement, hidden there by a programmer who wanted to leave a personal mark on the game. That human touch, that defiance of corporate order, gave Mew a soul. Every subsequent mythical is a carefully orchestrated marketing event. Mew was a secret that players uncovered for themselves. The rumours of its existence in 1996 spread through playgrounds and magazines like wildfire, and that organic, unscripted mystery cannot be replicated by any amount of promotional material. It's the difference between finding a treasure map in your attic and being handed a souvenir brochure at the entrance of a theme park, and that is why Mew remains the permanent anchor of the Pokémon brand. After 30 years, Mew is the one constant. When Pokémon GO needed a long-term goal, they chose Mew as the grand prize for the Kanto region special research. When the franchise wanted to celebrate its 20th anniversary in 2016, they distributed Mew via a code in the anime, directly to every player who watched. Mew is the mascot of the Pokémon Company's very earliest trademark filings, registered years before the games even launched. Its silhouette is a logo of the franchise's origin story. The 151st Pokémon, the one that shouldn't have existed, the one that made the rest possible. Look at the pattern of every new generation, a new region, a new Pokédex, a new set of legendaries. And then quietly a small mythical creature with a childlike design and a lore tied to wishes or time or nature. Celebi, Jirachi, Manaphy, Shaman, Victini, Hooper, Magana, Zarude, Pecorant. They all follow the same template. They all have a unique signature move, a special ability, and a distribution method that requires either a ticket, a download code, or a trip to a physical location. They are the Mew clones, and they are a direct result of the lineage that began in the Cerulean cave. But none of them have ever been able to replicate the moment of discovery. When a player first realized that there were 151 Pokémon, not 150, that was a paradigm shift. It changed the way people interacted with the game. It turned Pokémon from a simple collection game into a treasure hunt that felt infinite, and Mew's legacy extends beyond the games. In the first movie, Mew stood opposite Mewtwo, not as a fighter but as a protector. It refused to attack, choosing instead to heal the clones and restore peace. That portrayal cemented Mew as a benevolent, almost spiritual figure, the guardian of life's blueprint. That resonance rippled through every film and special appearance that followed. When Ash encountered a baby Lugia in the second movie, the story echoed the same themes of creation and protection. When Zygarde appeared in the anime as a guardian of the ecosystem, it was Mew's role as the world's living DNA that set the precedent. Mew is the root from which all other mythicals grow, and its absence would leave a gap that no other Pokémon could fill. So when you look at the history of the Pokémon franchise, you see that Mew is not just a collectible, it is the reason the franchise survived its infancy. The glitch that created the myth is the same glitch that made Pokémon more than a fad. Mew gave players something to chase, something to debate, something to believe in, and every time a new mythical is announced, the community collectively wonders, is it as special as Mew? The answer is always no, because Mew's legacy isn't a matter of power or design, it's a matter of origin. Mew is the first, the original, the one that was never supposed to exist but did anyway. And yet, despite all of this, there remains one final mystery, one last thread that ties Mew's story together in a way that even the deepest fans have never fully unraveled. That thread leads to a secret so deeply buried in the lore that it has almost been forgotten, a secret that connects Mew to the very fabric of reality itself. That secret is the eternal secret. Looking back at the legacy of the 151st, it is impossible not to see the pattern Mew carved into the stone of this franchise. Every mythical Pokémon that followed, from Celebi sailing through time to Rarity waking from its slumber, carries the echo of that original blueprint. The small size, the hidden location, the whisper of a secret that the game does not want you to fully know. The archetype was set. And yet even now, Mew remains the most important Pokémon ever created. Not because of its stats, not because of its Movepool, but because of what it represents in the history of the medium itself. That reason lies in the nature of the secret. We exist now in an age of total exposure. A game is announced, and within moments of its release, the data miners have peeled back every layer. Every sprite is extracted, every event flag is catalogued, every hidden myth is dissected on a public forum before the majority of players have even finished the opening route. The mystery is gone before it can breathe. But Mew belongs to a different era. Mew was not revealed through a trailer or a press release. It was discovered through a glitch, a crack in the code that allowed a generation of players to peer into a room that was never meant to be opened. That is an experience the modern games can never replicate. The data miners can capture every piece of data, but they cannot capture the feeling of 1996. The schoolyard, rumours, the printed pages of CoroCoro passed hand to hand. The eternal appeal of Mew is not in what it can do, but in how it was found. It is the last true ghost in the machine, a secret so deep that it became the very culture of the game. This is why Mew represents the childhood wonder of the unknown so perfectly. It is the embodiment of the belief that the world is larger than what is shown to you, that out there, in the margins of the code, in the empty corners of the map, there is something waiting, something the creators put there just for you. Mew taught a generation to look past the surface. It taught them that a game could love you back, that it could hold secrets so deep they felt personal. Mew was never just a creature to be caught. It was a mystery to be trusted, a reward for believing in the magic of the cartridge itself. And so, as we close this final chapter on the original Pokémon, we arrive at the deepest truth of all. Mew is not just a Pokémon. Mew is the heart of the franchise. In a world that now contains gods of time, space, and creation, Mew remains the soft, playful, innocent core of what Pokémon actually is. It is the genetic seed of an entire universe, the first dream, the eternal secret. It reminds us why we fell in love with this world in the first place. Not for the power, not for the victories, but for the feeling of stepping into the tall grass and knowing deep down that anything could happen. That feeling is the eternal secret of Mew. It cannot be cracked by a data mine. It cannot be erased by time. It lives in the hearts of everyone who ever believed there was something more. Thank you for staying with me through this journey into the truth about the original Pokémon. Keep that wonder close. Good night. What did you think of this journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective or taught you something new, consider subscribing for more mind-expanding content. And if you know someone who would find this as fascinating as you did, share it with them. These are the kind of conversations that matter.